All right, it's Saturnday, December 7th, 2024. Live open phones right from the start. So if you want to call in with any comments, complaints, critiques, criticism, useful ideas, whatever you have, just put it all out there on the table. Phones are open phones for open minds. Even closed minds, we kind of don't care. We're just interested in what you know. So points of interest for today. People are celebrating the CEO killer. Yeah, obviously, the whole class warfare thing. And this might tie into why they showed that smiley face guy, to bring in the Joker element. And there's been a lot of Joker aspects attached to the recent assassins. As we've talked about at length. Then I also want to talk about the continued drone invasion. And have a great example of very distinct, very precise predictive programming for 9/11 in Back to the Future, which we'll talk about. Maybe we'll talk about AI as the new mechanical Turk. And in addition to that, there's quite a lot more. I mean, I got a pretty long list, but we'll get to all of it. We have a lot of time today, so phones are open. Let's see who is already here in the raft. All right, Rocco Calzone. Awesome. Yeah, and I haven't even uploaded last night's episode or the one before I came down with the food sickness. But those are processing right now. So you're going to have probably like 6 hours of this to pour over. All right, Frugal Snowbird, number 1. I need to get some stickers from Sticker Mule. I need to be able to send out like gold stickers with the 33 for those who accurately guess the answers to our randomized pop quizzes, but also for other things. We need to incentivize good behavior. A blue wrench sticker would be cool. I have some ideas. In fact, I did some preliminaries with some AI. And speaking of, AI doesn't exist. I mean, we have what we term AI, but artificial intelligence, as it's popularly misunderstood, needs to be confronted as a modern-day mechanical Turk. There's this almost, I guess it's a built-in assumption that if I can't figure out how it works, I must ascribe it to something beyond my understanding, beyond man even, the divine fallacy. And this is something that Arthur C. Clarke sort of alludes to with the any sufficiently developed technology is indistinguishable from magic. And I add on to this does not mean it is magic. And one of the things we're always doing here is just decoding the magic show. And it's important not to take it too literally. We're living in the age of visual illiteracy, where we can no longer tell real from fake. Not with our eyes alone. It requires discernment, which is a process of cognition. So we need to suspend judgment and analyze things rationally without putting things into our frame of reference that do not exist. And this would include AI, as represented in Hollywood as some kind of sentient Hell 9000 Skynet entity, which it is not. It is a glorified search engine. And I'm not trying to demean it. It's powerful. And also, in fact, I was just listening to something unbelievable. It's like, we don't need drugs. This age is psychedelic. I was listening to an AI-generated reinterpretation of a Slayer album as though performed by a 1950s surf punk band. So you have these crazy sadistic lyrics, but it sounds like real people singing it. I mean, it's amazing what it can do, but it doesn't mean that there's some kind of sentience in there, and I don't want to ascribe to it any kind of supernatural agency. All right, Matt XJC, Jennifer Reeves, early to the raft, Diana South, Tim and Vic 131 says, hello, fellow thought criminals. Oh yeah, hot skulls. That's why you see the hot skull at the top of the page here, the penguin with the burning skull on the cover of the Insider, which is going to come out. But the hot skull represents, well, it alludes to the movie Hot Skull, where they have to mandate everyone wear earplugs because mind viruses are spreading, and they're communicated through the spoken word. And what we're doing here is we are super spreading the exact types of mind viruses that in the movie they would have quarantined you for. And in the movie, the more of these you accumulate, the hotter you get like this fever. So here we are, hot skulls, out in Antarctica. JC, how has the Antarctic expedition went? Was there a 24-hour sun? That's next week. Something to look forward to. And if predictive programming can be trusted, we might have a nuke this Christmas. There's an upcoming movie called Homestead, which I think Copaesthetic posted a link to in Gilded. If you haven't watched it, Homestead, and I think it's by the same, is it Angel Productions? Which would make it the same company that did Sound of Freedom by that child trafficker Tim Ballard, played by Jim Caviezel. It's Caviezel, but I spell it with a Q because he's a big Q proponent, which is actually embarrassing today. Like, I created a fake, like as a joke, it's called Homestead. Homestead. Los Angeles getting nuked. I created a fake JFK Jr.'s coming back to life to save us account on Twitter. It's like a whole community for people who are waiting for the return of JFK Jr. I created this community as a joke. And you know what happened? 792 people have not only taken it seriously, but they have been commenting on it regularly. So I haven't even been paying attention to my own JFK community, but it's there. And all day long, they're posting pictures of JFK Jr., of Kennedy, and various reasons why they think that very soon he's going to be back. A lot of people are promoting this guy, a pastor, Pastor Bob Joyce, who claims to be Elvis. And he hangs out with Bruce Lee. So this is what we're talking about. People who think these, when I say crackheads, I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm talking about QAnon, QRACK, those types of crackheads. The crackheads believe that they're communicating with Elvis Presley and Bruce Lee on Twitter. So here's a picture of the Bruce Lee impersonator and the Elvis Presley impersonator on X, getting all the accolades, getting all the attention, probably the groupies too, as though these were in fact Bruce Lee and Elvis Presley returned from the dead. And this is the same cult that worships JFK, but this is in my group. Like, I made this happen. I just opened the door, I created a community, and look what happened. It just spontaneously generated. I don't know if these are all bots, but all day long, I mean, they're putting pictures of JFK Jr. with a Santa cap on, as though maybe he's coming home for Christmas. But here it is, JFK Jr. is coming back, official account. I called it official, that's why they're tricked. 792 members. Patricia Steer says, hilarious yet sad. Yeah, absolutely. Like, we want to cry for them. Or we're crying with laughter. It's like, goes back and forth. It is kind of sad, but it's a cult. You know, and what do you do with a cult like this? And I have some ideas. You know, my objective here is to expose at least the fraud behind the JFK story, the whole George News scenario, but that's going to happen. We can deal with that later. But that happened while I wasn't even paying attention. I haven't monetized it. I should have. But just for clarification, Pastor Bob Joyce is not Elvis, and Gene Ho knows he's not Bruce Lee, but he plays it up. Gene Ho is the guy who publishes the physical magazine George News that was JFK Jr.'s. He bought the trademark, and he publishes it, and he pretends like he's working for JFK Jr., and then he's joined forces with this fake Elvis. And they also hang out with the fake JFK Jr.'s all the time. I mean, it's a whole clique. Okay, let me catch up on comments here. Frugal Snowbird says, the Medicare CEO shooting is said to be an assisted suicide for the life insurance money. I saw that particular spinoff. I'm still thinking it's a hoax, it's a psyop, and I'm looking at the reactions from people. It's remarkable. You know how many people are cheering the death of a CEO as though like it's inherently a good thing? It's really psychotic. Doesn't matter that it's fake, or if it is fake. Fake or real, the people responding to it as though it's real are showing their fangs. They're really showing what they're about. This is why I've been saying for some time that, like I talk about pose on the right, there are people who cannot possibly believe what they're saying. People like Nick Fuentes. These are parodies of extremism. They don't really believe it. There's so many examples you can prove it. Like Laura Loomer, for example, and these other characters. She faked being Jewish. That's why she stopped getting donations for her congressional run. But she knew so little about it that she shows up to a synagogue wearing a satanic pentagram. And her manager had to correct her and teach her how to distinguish a 5-pointed star from a 6-pointed star. So they don't even believe what they're saying. They're all parodies of extremism. However, on the left, I think they really do believe everything they say. I don't think they need pose on the left, because every time something like this happens, you have people on the left who are just unabashedly calling for the beheading of their enemies, essentially. And we'll get to a lot of it soon here. I want to also cover the developments with Daniel Penny, because that's going to turn into something. Okay, here we go. New Yorkers hold a CEO killer lookalike competition. So here in New York, you have a group of psychopaths who are dressed up like the shooter. They're lionizing him. He's a hero. And they're basically saying that they agree that this needed to happen. This was an expression of the popular will. Let's listen to this individual for a moment. He says, too, that this is insane. I'm glad there are people who do not feel great about the current state of things and are willing to openly express it. Like, that's kind of a strange thing to say when you're talking about deposing. And this guy on this bullet, if you believe the story, he wrote delay, deny, depose, which is a reference to a book or statement about insurance companies, but also he replaced deny with depose, which is specifically an assassination term.
They'll give me $2 and $1 a go to Palestinian relief. But I feel good. I mean, I'm glad people do not feel great about the current state of things and are willing to openly express that.
Yeah, okay, openly expressing that you don't feel good about things is a nice euphemism for I pumped this CEO full of holes and just shot him down the street. I mean, that was a cold-blooded murder. And he's saying, this is just somebody expressing their feelings. I'm glad people are able to express that openly. Like, that is insane. But he's dressed up like the killer. So this is not a difficult message to decode here. It's very much built on class warfare. I think there's a lot of talk here also about the oppressed and the elite and how the masses need to unite. In fact, I was listening to some podcaster who was describing how this is what we need, that the people need to unite against the elite. Here's another example.
Living in New York, money's a little cheap, so I'm just trying to win a cash prize here.
How much was it?
What's up?
How much was it? $50?
It wasn't advertised.
Who do you think organized this?
The FBI. Yeah. The American intelligence community. Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't know what they're on. Mentanol. Skyfish says, one of my coworkers told me JFK Jr. has been showing up in disguise around Trump appearances. I took the opportunity to tell him about. Yeah, you can say, hey, by the way, try skepticism to people who are willing to believe that JFK Jr. is going to come back and save them. He's not even a Republican. He would have to change his registration. But you're seriously telling me you have a coworker claiming that JFK has been showing up. That's an old story. Goes back to about 2019. It was Vincent Fuchsia, and then it was -48. Then it was 107. Now it's Edward X. Then it's was it Jesse Waters and Matt Gaetz? Jesse Waters and Matt Gaetz have both been pointed at as potentially JFK Jr. I mean, do you believe this? I mean, this is insanity. It's delusion. So you're trying to throw a life preserver to somebody who's actually at the bottom of the sea of irrelevance. They're not going to make it up to the raft. You wasted your breath. Sorry to say. At this point, there's no salvaging people who are stuck on Q Street, because that means that they're not filtering their information properly. And that's what we're talking about. Believers versus knowers. What's the qualitative difference? It's not that we have a difference of opinions and we have different beliefs. It's that we have a different way of processing information. Passive and active. Non-skeptical and skeptical. And if someone is at the point where they're entertaining such a notion seriously, then they're beyond help, because they would need to first help themselves. And that begins with a little bit of awareness about how they're consuming the information. I mean, this is free. Infinite Plane Radio is free mind war inoculation, but you have to accept that many of your, this is just by design. The government, they gave everybody mind aids, and that includes people that we respect. It just means that they are selectively susceptible to viruses of the mind that come from Big Brother. And they've been rendered this way, they've been turned into believers so that they do not resist these viruses. So if you're, let's say, for example, we are building our group on the notion of, let's be aware of the difference between beliefs and knowledge, and let's just refuse beliefs. Let's go on what we can know. Then you could say we've been inoculated against these beliefs that you're meant to just absorb passively. And that's what I mean by mind viruses. Things that you just passively catch. And we shouldn't be passively coming to believe anything. It should always be an active process. But this is what I mean when I say we've been given this condition. They've rendered people into passive receivers of propaganda and reactors. I think the other day I mentioned that I read that quote from Frank Herbert from Dune Messiah. They're not mad. They're trained to believe, not to know, because belief can be manipulated. So they're trained to be manipulated. So manipulated that they'll believe in all kinds of garbage. Michelle Castor said, I just listened to last night's show. I'm going to read Catcher in the Rye again, but with a much different perspective. Yeah, I read it too. And the first time around, I didn't catch anything. I just thought it was a lot of slang. But looking back at Joseph Atwell's interpretation and I guess I have done a lot of research in between that time and now, I'm pretty sure I might be able to read more into it. But his contention is that it contains very specific references to Masonic initiation rituals, very early on in the book. But the idea of Catcher in the Rye being some kind of a book meant to program or activate mind-controlled assassins has been floated around for a long time. And recently, Jay Dyer's documentary, Clockwork Shining, kind of reiterates that, because the wife in The Shining is reading that book. And he contends that this is a clue that Kubrick was hinting, that The Shining is really about CIA mind-controlled assassins and how they're created. It's all old conspiracy lore. I think a lot of these conspiracies are designed to be entertaining, conspirataining, largely as a ploy to distract people who are looking too close from perhaps arriving at the right conclusions. I think we've gone to the end of the rabbit trails here. They have all these trails: second shooter, deep state, psyop, false flag, hoaxes, and then it gets into the realm of synchromysticism. How do we the revelation of the method? So we've gone down all these trails, and we've reached the bottom, I think, and then we just keep going, and that's what we have been doing. And that's why I'm so interested in this conversation with regard to Kubrick and predictive programming, is because we've seen where traditional or orthodox truthers have gone with the information. Like that documentary Clockwork Shining. They connect Kubrick to revealing certain things to us. But nowhere do they take note of the predictive value, of the foreshadowing within that movie, The Shining, that had clear implications for things that would happen in the future, specifically 9/11, in nuanced ways. So how can they go through something with such a fine-tooth comb and miss all this? Well, I would suggest it's deliberate. We weren't meant to go past their rabbit trails. All of the rabbit trails, these red herrings that have been guiding truthers, have been planted by the intelligence communities by design. All right, let's continue. Yeah, again, they're not mad. They're trained to believe. So these QAnoners, and I disparagingly refer to them as, hitting the Q pipe. Yeah, they're trained to be this way. And That's because if they were discerners, they wouldn't fall for anything, and they've been grafted onto the political horseshoe. These were escape risks, people willing or able to see through, and in order to prevent them from seeing all the way through, they just throw all kinds of red herrings, misdirection in their way. And people fall for these attractive storylines. Like, who wouldn't want to live in a world where Bruce Lee and Elvis Presley talk to you on Twitter? Personally, I think that's freakish. I wouldn't want that. But apparently a lot of people do. There are people who want to believe that Baron Trump is the son of Donald Trump and Princess Diana. Like, why would they want to believe that? It's some kind of bizarre, community-generated fan fiction universe. But religion's not new. Cults aren't new. I think we're looking at the mind control system tapping into their understanding of the human mind. I mean, you look at Netflix and its role in predictive programming, conditioning, and how its founder has these connections. I mean, it's just blood, but I mean, look, first CEO, co-founder of Netflix, descended from Edward Bernays and Sigmund Freud. Just think of the influence, even if they weren't related, the influence of Freud and Bernays on modern media. That explains it all. Like, that is pretty much summing up their understanding of manipulation of the mass mind en masse, and then their understanding of what's under the hood, our subconscious motivations, which they're constantly tapping into. Okay, let's continue. Isabel Ann says, because he's a gatekeeper. Yeah, anyone holding on to a false explanation inexplicably will start to look like a gatekeeper after a certain point. Like, I don't hear people talking about false flag theories anymore, or arguing that people are really dying at these mass casualty psyops. That we used to have to push back against that. Skyfish said, I would. Elvis and Bruce Lee together now, you'd be in trouble. No, Elvis would be what, like 80 something? Tim and Vic says, the shooter entered Central Park at 648. A mirror of 846. That's intriguing. Yeah, the numbers always tell a bit of a story. We were talking about these earlier today in our Gilded. It was like around the subject of why. Are these numbers indicative of some kind of magic spell? Is this a cult? What's really going on with these weird numbers? And I'm starting to think a lot of it is internal communication among the executors of these various psyops, the perpetrators, the ones who are the operatives. Because we see these as calling cards, and it's almost predictable. But by examining them in context, they do seem to have a certain order to them. And 846 in particular is interesting because it connects things like 9/11 to the George Floyd event in very specific ways. And there was an event similar to the George Floyd event in 2022, an individual named Amir Locke. And think about these names. A mirror, and then Locke. And he was killed in the Twin Cities. And this was the result of a no-knock warrant surprising him, and he gets shot. So Locke, no-knock warrant, which were then banned after this. So the whole thing is about the Locke. And his name's a mirror. And he was shot at 648, which we noted was a mirror of the George Floyd number, 846. So you have this connection of the George Floyd and the 846 thing and the storyline of the cops killing people. But this was only the start of it. That whole event with the mirror Locke happened to occur on 2/22/2022. No, it was on 2/2/2022. And he was 22 years old. So there are all kinds of references to the number 2, which is a reference like the twin and the mirror. And we're going deeper into it, but 8:46 a.m. is when 9/11 started. George Floyd kneeled on for 8:46. The Twin Cities on 5/25/2020 had the sun set at 8:46. Mercury rising, 8:46 a.m. on 9/11. So we've mapped out these various links with these 8:46 and similar numbers. and similar themes and concepts like twins, twin towers, twin cities. And it goes pretty deep. And it's so consistent that what I'm more or less arriving at here is that we're just looking at the structure of the script itself and their internal nomenclature, which explains the consistency. It's obviously a language. I don't think that the people with the gematria calculators, adding and subtracting and connecting it to words, are deciphering as much as they're adding noise. And I'm trying to reduce noise. We want more signal here. And I don't think we need to mystify it. We just need to identify it and maybe in context arrive at some understanding of what it means. Like, for example, the consistent use of the number 42 when it comes to any kind of black versus white dialectic in the news, any kind of race war stuff. Very consistent. Not hard to detect. I mean, these things are so predictable, it's ridiculous. Jackie Robinson, Mr. 42. Rosa Parks was 42 when she refused to lose her seat. And I can go down the line and show you the number 42 and its significance. But anyway, I'm just pointing out here that I'm not going to ascribe a supernatural cause to anything. I want to, in a way, it's kind of like we want to fumigate. We want to get rid of bad explanations right off the bat and maintain our quarantine and not admit anything under fallacious terms. We're fine-tuning our system here, our methodology, and it's what the think tank is for. There is not another group of people this size, dozens of people, hundreds of people, talking about this specific topic in this specific way, and then building on the information base that we have. And not only that, but coming to accurate conclusions and making pretty solid and regular predictions based on it. And there's a reason why this is not mainstream trutherville. There's a reason why nobody talks about the fakery to the extent we do, and why they all specifically minimize it. And one other point, a lot of people call things fake, or they say this is fake news, that's not real, that's a hoax, it's a psyop. They say that all the time. But the trouble with this is that you can have an individual item here that's true, but you contextualize it in what I've been referring today to as the sea of irrelevance, and it loses its meaning. If they don't have it in the right context, it doesn't matter. And we have the context. We have to put ourselves outside of the MSM box. And the truthers happen to be deeper in the box. They have a lot more presumptions built up into their world view. And I'd also point out alt media is just as contrived as the mainstream. Whether you're pro or anti, you're within the confines of their political horseshoe. So I've been taking the position here of anti-pro and anti-anti. If you're not anti-anti, why not? What makes you the reflexive anti to whatever? That means that you've become a stooge, a propaganda mule, easily provoked and triggered. Joined by X322, Truman B3000, KKIN, who says, according to most perspectives, numbers are considered man-made. Human invented the concept of numbers as a tool to quantify and represent quantities in the world. Although the idea of patterns and relationships in nature may have inspired their development. I think it's all really interesting. And you can also find that numbers and letters have always been somewhat synonymous up until recently. And that when you look into the occult and symbolic languages, they revert back to it, or they never stopped using it. And you find that there are additional layers of meaning. That's what the whole esoteric is about. The exoteric, esoteric. There's one interpretation for those who have eyes to see, ears to hear, and the other interpretation for those who have been purposefully left in the dark. Okay, so let's go through. There's quite a lot. I'm just barely scratching the surface here. So this is Representative Raskin, who says, on January 6th, it's going to be up to us to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. We will need bodyguards for everybody in Civil War conditions, all because the 9 justices did not want to do their job. So let's listen to this. This is unexpected. I didn't think there'd be any fight.
Efficient, because what can be put into the Constitution can slip away from you very quickly. And the greatest example going on right now before our very eyes is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which they're just disappearing with a magic wand, as if it doesn't exist, even though it could not be clearer what it's stating. And so, they want to kick it to Congress. So it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025, to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. And then we need bodyguards for everybody in Civil War conditions, all because the 9 justices, not all of them, but these justices who have not many cases to look at every year.
Now, the full context, the original post, I don't know exactly how likely this is, but it's just interesting to hear these thoughts put out there. The movie Civil War, if you remember, was something we talked about earlier this year. Has the Trump character in office, and then they go after him, and they specifically have a black woman shoot him. So it's all very ham-fisted in their symbolism, but it's pretty obvious it's Trump. So drone invasions. So these drone invasions have continued, but it's a question to me as to whether they're actually drones or if it's just people shitposting lights in the sky. And people have a propensity to believe that anything they see in the sky is likely something mysterious, supernatural, or rather alien. And these things are all kind of synonymous. Aliens are not a scientific proposition. Just because they couch it in science and technology doesn't mean we should mistake it for being that. Aliens are a reinvention of angels for atheists to believe in. And people are all too willing to believe in them. They're suspending their critical thinking, they're being unscientific, and they're falling for a ruse. And a lot of the mythology about aliens began just up the street here at Kirtland Air Force Base, where there's a whole documentary called The Mirage Men, where a conspiracy theorist was constantly seeing these weird things floating out of the base or flying away, and he thought these were examples of UFOs working with the U.S. government, and so he would speculate. And in order to discredit him, the Air Force sent some special agents into his life to pretend to be his friend, and they filled him with a bunch of garbage to discredit him. And a lot of the UFO mythology started from came out of the imaginations of the Air Force to screw with this guy and his entire community, which they did. And out of that, you have the UFOlogy cult. So what they often do is they misidentify things, they take clips out of context, and nobody ever corrects anybody. So let me show you one example. So this was filmed close to New Jersey a few minutes ago. This is a Facebook group share. So what's the source? Some guy on Twitter posting something on some Facebook group, but it doesn't trace back to the source. So what do you see? Well, it appears to be something floating in the night sky. Some glowing, like U-shaped drone is what he's saying. So people are mystified by this. What the heck is this? And I think what this one might be is they're recording the reflection of a lake, and you're looking at ducks. I've seen that one. No, this is a flock of birds. So these are Canadian geese. And these Canadian geese are lit, as you can see, they're illuminated by the city lights, and they're flying across the sky. So here you have a flock of geese being shared as though it were, in fact, aliens. Now, I'm pretty sure the person who posted it on Facebook knew what they were doing. This is all about engagement. And the person who repeated the post on X also knows that this is just bait. It's clickbait. It wouldn't take more than 5 seconds to figure it out. Thankfully, if you go on X, you do find a lot of people in the comments are, actively and critically examining the information, and they're finding the truth. But even if you point out the truth, the original posters never correct themselves. They're just as bad as their mainstream counterparts. Let me play a short clip here. This is great. This is a compilation of statements by some NASA employee talking. Her name is, I believe it's Catherine Coleman. And she's talking about how much she likes the ISS videos and how similar they are to animations. And she constantly has to remind her viewers that these are not animations.
I love this video because it looks like animation, like something that somebody made, but it's actually real footage from the space shuttle, just sped up just a little bit. And this is a little video. It's about 4 minutes long here. So there's the space station. I love that this is not animation. This is film taken by a shuttle of the space station. And so this is real. It's not animation. Now, this looks like animation, and I'm very proud to know that it's actually real film. It's not a video game. People are living there. I know this looks like animation, but it's actually really real. I love this video because it looks like animation. It doesn't look real, but it is real. I love this video because it looks...
It's actually really real. Okay, actually really real. Got it. Yeah. I mean, I almost detected a level of embarrassment here on her behalf. Like, maybe she's just credulous that she has to sell this crap. Maybe she was idealistic. She thought she got the gig. And she's going to see the space station, go to space, and she finds out it's all just movies. And she can't believe where she is. And she signed all the agreements. She can't get out of it. And she's like, yeah, guys, it's real. It's totally not an animation. It's almost like she's low-key sarcastic here. Oh, yeah, this is really, really actually real. Like, I actually have to represent this. I mean, this sounds like... Tell me if you hear sarcasm.
To know that it's actually real film. It's not a video game. People are living there. I know this looks like animation, but...
Yeah, I sense a bit of despondency. It must be real because it looks so fake. Ted Striker 2112, exactly. Joe Sanchez says, how many people are looking for aliens that resemble something from the movies, though? Oh, yeah, and absolutely. You have to think about that. Aliens would obviously show up here with lights on, right? That is so dumb. The idea that they would have lights, like headlights in space. Or that they would show up in such a dramatic way anyway. And that's what people are saying. That, oh no, there's a mothership and these are little drones to get our attention. But again, 90% of the drone videos that are being shared are by these anonymous troll bot accounts, which populate most of X. I mean, I have a love-hate relationship with this site. Mick West pointed something out here. He said, anomalous drone spotters. If you do not include time and date, exact location, and the direction you're facing, your videos are useless. I've had to lay down the same rules for ISS spotters. I'm like, don't share with me your ISS footage if you can't tell me time, date, longitude, latitude, all the details. No one ever can. No one ever has. But I have to do that. Otherwise, I'll get people sending me videos. Hey, look, I saw the space station. And it's like an airplane. It's got red and green lights. It's by the airport. I'm like, why are people so quick to believe that what they're seeing is from out of this world? And I think they're tapping into this desire for people to believe in a savior or higher powers. It's part of their understanding, I think, that, I referenced earlier Sigmund Freud and Edward Bernays. Like, they know what motivates us. And I think a lot of people do want some kind of divine intervention, a sky daddy, some savior. So I posted this to him. So you're just going to reject this evidence? Because obviously it's not evidence. I just sent him a GIF of a bunch of drones. Like, this is what I mean. It's low effort, low quality evidence, no specifics to tie it down to. But this is an important point, because there are people who say, well, I've never seen the ISS, but a lot of people have. Okay, well, that's not evidence for it. Or they'll say, I haven't seen it, but a lot of people have, therefore there is something up there, even if it's not what NASA says. Okay, so you dispute the NASA space station, but you believe there's something there that moves in the exact same way because a lot of people. So that's just an ad populum, which is a weak argument as well. Okay, let's see here. Buzzing Fret says, I think you're onto something, IPS. Her words and behavior speak volumes. I think so. Not everyone could be happy about it. And I guarantee, like, it wouldn't be likely that you would know when you're at the bottom level. You know, you're going to work for NASA. Oh, by the way, it's all fake. You wouldn't go in any further. So I think you get recruited as you're higher up. And this is why I say that the programmers are 95 to 99% programmed themselves. They're not deprogrammed, but they're in their positions and they get drafted into this particular area and it's highly compartmentalized. So I could imagine someone like her likely got to the top and now has to sell this garbage, and just to me sounded incredulous. It's either that or she's a total dupe. And I tend to have a little more respect for people. I assume they're operatives, compromised, or devious mind control operatives before I assume that they're fools. Joe Santos says, I was in Tennessee and a huge group of people went out to see the ISS, and it was a yellow light flying through the sky 1,000,000 miles an hour. Right. Was it your best friend's cousin's sister? I mean, we need more specifics than a huge group of people. And that's kind of what people say. That's the exact type of claim. I used to get claims where people would say, well, I saw it through my front door, and I ran and I saw it going over the horizon from my back window. And then they'll call back in an hour, and they'll say, I just saw it again. I'm like, you do realize that even if you're going to claim to see it falsely, you still need to adhere to the model. And according to the ball Earth model, the Earth has a shadow extending into space more than 800,000 miles. Therefore, any low Earth orbit object past the terminator, meaning it's after sunset, is going to be within the darkest part, the umbra of the Earth's shadow, which means the sun doesn't touch it, which means you can't see it. So when someone's saying, I saw it 3 times last night, I'm like, well, if you were seeing stars, then you were in the shadow, you didn't see it. One-Eyed Jack says Morgile saw a UFO the other day. Yeah, I saw him getting into it. Morgile's very opportunistic. You know, and the word Morgile actually refers to that. Morgile it's a verb for reaching in between couch cushions for change, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but this refers to people who do it while they're couch surfing. So it's not even their couch and they're morgiling. Like, it's just kind of, you know, it's a little rude. Boundary violation. One-Eyed Jack says, I think he was on speed. Has he ever not? No, I shouldn't say. Look, I like his work. I think he's kind of stuck in the mud flood era. But if he's getting into the UFO thing, he's just grifting at this point. Like, no. There's a general rule here. It's an axiom. And it's, if there's a light in the sky, we must assume it's an airplane until proven otherwise. And that leaves the door open to helicopters. But it's an airplane. Don't even bring to the table it's a unicorn with Bigfoot on the back and he's holding a lantern. Don't even bring in it might be a UFO. It's like, no, you cannot include into the conversation things that have not already previously been determined to exist. You can't insert impossibilities. Like, I'm under no obligation to entertain every single possibility. I don't live in that universe where everything's possible. Not in that sense. KKIN says, have we done the Fly Me to the Moon study? I watched the movie. What specifically are you referring to? Now, in Fly Me to the Moon, it should be, I'll just, because it's related to it, the president at the time, Nixon, in the movie, he was not aware that an agency higher than him was involved in staging a fake moon landing to win a propaganda war against the Russians. The president didn't even know. And I think that's likely. Like, I don't think Trump knows that the people on the screen aren't really floating in space. Like, he could easily be a Truman in a Truman Show, if anybody is. But there's no reason to let them in on everything. He's a programmer, but he's got to be 90% programmed for this entire thing to work. But if you haven't seen Fly Me to the Moon, there's quite a lot in there in terms of like Easter eggs, concurrent programming, and hints. More than a couple of references to Boeing and associating Boeing with disasters, with Apollo 1 even. And that's notable because last year, or this entire year, many of the headlines were about Boeing and crony capitalism and how Boeing was a symptom of it. So Boeing is, in a way, just symbolic of something deeper, but they made references to it in the movie, which is not a coincidence considering Boeing's role in the ongoing disaster of the stranded astronauts who have now spent 6 months in fake space. And yeah, as far as the Megalopolis breakdown, if you haven't seen Megalopolis, I would suggest this. Keep in mind the main character is an allusion to Neo, and his entire the entire design authority is based on the strangers from Dark City. So he's on the roof with a clock. You got the design authority. That's Dark City time control. And his resemblance to Neo is intentional. And this is further, I think, illustrated by the fact that you got Lawrence Fishburne. And when they're driving around, it's raining and there's this greenish hue, just like in the Matrix. And just as Morpheus was telling Neo about space in the Matrix, in the realm, and matter, the material realm, in Megalopolis, this Lawrence Fishburne and Adam Driver as Morpheus and Neo are having similar conversations, only this time the Morpheus character is explaining the intricacies of time and time control. And of course, both time and space are governed by Saturn, and this is all tied into Dark City, the clock, Kronos, and then of course the Men in Black, who are the design authority implementing the controlled demolition at the beginning of the movie. That's all hinting at 9/11, time control, the implementing of a psyop on time because they're controlling history by putting fake news into our consciousness that becomes absorbed collectively as real. So we live in a shared fake history. That's their time control. But time and space, Saturn, these things are intertwined. And you could add to that the 9/11 connections to the Matrix. And then you add into this the 9/11 connections to Megalopolis, which actually has footage from 9/11 2001, because they were making the movie back then. But then they put it on pause. But they still use some of that old footage. And that's highly significant for so many reasons. Francis Ford Coppola delayed the movie because it would have almost been redundant to 9/11 because it so closely approximated it. And he even had a scene he had to take out because of its resemblance to what happened on that day. But yes, excellent. I mean, the movie's, I'm sorry, but it's rather incoherent, hard to take in. It's bombastic. It's a lot of visual noise. I don't know if it's good, but it's relevant to our interests. Joined by Patricia Steer on X. Thanks for joining. Kevin Mooring says CEO is Gabby Petito 2.0. It even has elements to the Boston Bombers, Joker Sarnoff. And when I saw the CEO shooter, I first thought of Sarnoff, who they called Joker. That was his nickname. So the Boston Bomber looks like this guy. And the Boston Bomber's nickname being Joker. And I said that his smile might have been an allusion to Joker, because they've been associating the assassins with Joker. Now, I have a deeper connection to that, because in the movie Joker, the first one, he shoots Robert De Niro's character on TV. So you already have the Joker as a shooter. That character is based on Travis Bickle from Taxi Driver, who inspired John Hinckley Jr. to shoot Reagan. So we have some deep connections with the Joker archetype and assassins. And that smile on his face, I think, reiterates this. And then, of course, you add to it these other elements. KKIN says, just curious if there's been any breakdown. I also watched Apollo 18 a couple days ago. I'm trying to make... Okay, yeah, let me know about that. I haven't seen it. I think a lot of us focus a lot on Apollo 11, but there are many others. So many other hoaxes to break down. But yeah, the Boston Hoaxathon, the bomber was the Joker, and it's one of the first examples of where you started to see the intersection between the Batman fictional universe and the psyops of the day, and it's continued unabated. You have the Aurora shooter, the Boston bombing, both alluded to specifically in Dark Knight Rises, and then you have this ongoing, continued linkages between the Gotham Batman universe and the psyops on the present world stage. I mean, another great example of this is that Amazon this summer ran Batman Caped Crusader, and the Trump-esque character Rupert Thorne had his right ear cut by a boomerang that Batman threw at him as a warning shot. And he said, "I'll see you next season," basically. Okay, nice. Kevin Mooring says, the cop handling the case worked the Boston Marathon. Okay, if you could get me that name, I want to put that into my notes. So he's already a PSYOP operative. This is a drill. It's a live drill. Is it Martin Richard? Well, you'll inform me of this because this is a very consistent thing. Like when I saw that Maui event and all the truthers were running around about the DO children. Oh, those 1,500 kids were zapped with direct energy weapons, but they had no evidence of it. I said, it's likely a hoax. Relax. Meanwhile, they're crying. They're sending teddy bears. They're raging in their cars on TikTok. Turns out that the chief of police that presided over the Vegas PSYOP had been moved over there to Maui. So when you see these same characters, it's like, okay, well, it's the same. I would extend that and say it's the same media. Don't trust anything. Doesn't matter their geographic location. It's the same media. It's the same apparatus of mass. I mean, it's designed for this. The mass media is a liar. It's that simple. It's a good liar. And good liars don't lie with every breath. They lie when they have your trust and strategically when they know they can get away with it. 1-900 Shed Dog says, Comey's daughter is the one prosecuting the Diddy case. That one's looking increasingly worse over time. It's pretty terrible. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's grotesque. It's like Marquis de Sade. And I'm still kind of vacillating between real and fake with this one. I mean, with Epstein, you had no real evidence. And really, if you get down to it, what did you have as far as solid evidence? But with this Diddy thing, you do have him kicking that woman in the hotel. And you have all these reports, which are just so lurid. Doesn't mean it's real. There is something of a programming basis for this being a big PSYOP, but I'll say this. If it's not real, the writers are sick. But they're not really any sicker than Kathy O'Brien and the satanic ritual abuse community who fabricate all kinds of atrocities. Salacious nonsense when you get down to it. Tim and Vic says, NYPD sent divers into a body of water in Central Park to search for the murder weapon. Joe Carr was found in Watertown. Good connection. Wasn't he hiding in a boat? But yeah, good point there. Anyone else remember Joe Rogan looking at Boston Crisis cast actor with bomb-shredded pants? Not a single... Yes, everybody remembers that. Joe Rogan at the Boston bombing. I could just type in, and like we know this isn't serious, but if I were to type in right now, Joe Rogan at the Boston bombing, because for some reason, everybody, here we go, every short, muscular, bald guy is just like automatically looking like Joe Rogan. They all kind of look, it's a certain type thing. With the shredded pants. Okay, that's right. The reason why this guy stood out is that his shredded pants didn't have any sort of wounds below it. It was like, well, how did his pants get all shredded? It looks like a Walking Dead costume. But yeah, this was Joe Rogan's cameo at one of the biggest PSYOPs of the decade. I don't even think it looks like him. You know, I always assumed it was just kind of a joke. Like sometimes we do joke, sometimes we make fun, and we know, but we also are aware that the people who aren't a part of this discussion don't really know when we're not being serious. Like, no, this guy's probably even, I would say, closer to 6 feet tall, even though he's crouching. That's not him. Just tuning in, the alleged assassin looks like Jake Gyllenhaal, says Observing Reality. Yeah, that's true. And Synchromorpheus and others in our chat were pointing that out, that the hoodie, the wardrobe, very much like Jake Gyllenhaal. It looks like Donnie Darko. And Donnie Darko is what we would term here a predictive programming proxy for Donald Trump. And if you go into that movie, it's intriguing for a lot of reasons. 9/11 foreshadowing. It's built into Leave the World Behind. If you haven't seen Leave the World Behind, the girl Rose is called Donnie Darko derisively because of how she is, but there are numerous connections between that movie, Leave the World Behind, the Blackout, Donald Trump. It's fascinating how they kind of wove these together. But the movie Donnie Darko has foreshadowing for 2020, for Trump. Even has Biden running for president because it takes place in 88. Has planes falling from the sky. 9/11 like stuff in its marketing imagery caused it to be somewhat suppressed in its initial promotion. It was released on a January 19th, which has a great deal of significance to the planes falling if we get into the repeated patterns we see with the programming. But I think what's even more interesting, and I haven't seen the sequel, but the director is the son of a NASA employee who worked on the Mars Viking mission. Space movies and psyop enhancing programming movies, all in the same family. A couple of other things about that movie. I see he's sleepwalking and he has this invisible friend who's a big rabbit. And the rabbit is obviously an allusion to Alice in Wonderland and her dream of wonder, the whole thing about going into the rabbit trail. But the Alice in Wonderland connection is brought back with Rose in Leave the World Behind when she goes into the bunker. But there's a couple of other links there I should probably get into, but the main thing here is that Jake Gyllenhaal does look like that shooter, and in the movie you do have this very prominent scene where it all culminates, in this shooting of this character, the bunny character with one eye, Frank. He's got the head wound. So if you look at Frank Donnie Darko, now I don't know the significance of the name Frank, but in Donnie Darko, Frank is the name of the bunny. And I'm here with the glowing eye. So the accentuated right eye is a reoccurring theme with all of the predictive programming for the Trump head wound scenario. I thought there might be significance to the name Frank in the Joker movie because Murray Franklin gets shot by the Joker and the blood splatters on the name Frank. I thought there might be some significance, but regardless, there is a great deal of attention to detail in all of their programming and psyops, and so it wouldn't surprise me. It is often that nuanced. Yeah, so Donnie Darko coming out on 1/19 and ISS coming out on 1/19. The date 1/19, the number 119, like 9/11, just these numbers do reflect a very consistent use of metaphors, visual metaphors, and symbols. And we've been documenting it. In fact, I have a series of mind maps that I really want to put into print. I thought about doing a book on it. You see, I have about 24 mind maps where I am illustrating how we're not cherry picking and we are determining consistent patterns, and we're not basing our entire analysis on it, but we are just noticing, and we're not attributing anything to it supernatural, but just putting what's there. And I was thinking maybe I should print these out, in a larger format. I think the easiest way to do it would be to put them in the Insider tabloid. I might get the most, the highest quality print and size. Roxy W says the Boston bombing was one of the most poorly staged, crafted psyops ever. Yeah, I think so too. I think they overdid it with the special effects. They gave it away. I think they showed too much. And I kind of think, and sometimes it disappoints me, I kind of think that our criticism, those of us media critics, have caused them to kind of be a little squib shy. So we don't see all the blood squirting everywhere. We don't have the severed limbs, the amputee crisis actors. We don't have the gore we used to. It's like they're trying to be a little more reserved. Like the less they put out there, the less we can criticize. And I kind of feel like the quality of the show has been diminished because they know we're going to call it out. I might be wrong, but I think psyops used to be a lot bloodier. And obviously, easier to discredit as fake. Diana South says, Kevin Spacey, House of Cards, character's name is Frank. Isabel Ann says, Jake Gyllenhaal was in Nightcrawler. He steals a bike. CEO shooter on a bike. Okay, yeah, and this is also pointed out. Donnie Darko opens up where he's riding on a bike. He's always on his bike, and they have some song from Echo and the Bunnymen playing in the background, but he's always bicycling around. So there might be some significance to that as well, but there's a consistency here. And that's a cult movie. I mean, it didn't get the big, I think, reception it should have, and they blamed it on its 9/11 connections. Let me bring that up really quick if you're not familiar. Okay, so Donnie Darko, 9/11. I'm just going to put marketing. Donnie Darko and 9/11, too many coincidences. It's a pro board. I might want to look at that. We'll look at that first. Okay, it was filmed in 28 days. That's interesting. That's I guess it's a small film too. So 28 days, I mean, that's not a huge film. But 28 days is kind of short. During the fall of 2000, Sundance in early 2001. Here we go. It was delayed because a plot based on a jet engine crashing into a house wouldn't be popular after 9/11, and the Arabic-style font on the promo movie posters needed to be changed because the perpetrators of 9/11 were from the Middle East. I cannot think of a more iconic omen for 9/11 than the slow-motion scene of a jet engine ripping through an upside-down American flag on the ceiling of Donnie Darko's bedroom. It's intriguing the scene was filmed a year before 9/11. Then there's a scene where students are waiting for a bus and they look at each other in dread when they hear the jet engine above, and they look up and no plane is visible. So this is a very detailed breakdown of the connections. I will have to parse through this later. It looks pretty in-depth. So I'm going to put a link to this on my minds.com, so you'll get this if you follow me there. But I also, again, want to reiterate his father, the director's father, works for NASA. And one of my contentions here is that NASA is not in the business of getting us to some resort on Mars. The purpose of NASA is worldview control. And worldview control is about controlling your inner space, your mind space, not what's up. And so with regard to movies, that's where they primarily seize control. They give us the utopian vision with their space movies. And they put us in a paradigm where many things that aren't possible now become possible to us. And so then we could be manipulated by these beliefs. And it makes perfect sense, too, that somebody involved in the space agency would have his son involved in a movie that is bolstering the psyop of the century. And so 9/11, again, by all indications, had Stanley Kubrick as one of its contributors, as did Apollo 11. So you cannot separate the big fake terror from fake space. These things are intertwined. It's the same production company. It's the psyop entertainment complex. Anybody talking about the military-industrial complex is misdirected. It's the psyop entertainment complex because the war is primarily mind war. Donnie Darko uses a pistol, a Colt. Okay, was it a Colt 45? There's a few movies I may have to rewatch. Like, I might have to go rewatch the Back to the Future series. No, it's a custom Colt MK4 Series 80 with a bluish finish. So let's get into this other topic here. We talked about the movie yesterday. Yesterday I was talking about the series, The Madness. And, you know, I'd said that The Madness was paralleling and possibly predicting our political reality of the day, and how the character that was dismembered, the white power nationalist guy, was definitely based on Stu Peters, and that the female reporter, the conspiracy theorist Laura Jennings, is 100% based on Laura Loomer, and that the billionaire funding the internet neo-Nazis was based on Elon Musk. Like I put that in my first review. And sure enough, days ago, Elon Musk was connected definitively to several high-profile neo-Nazi influencers on X. Like, these are news stories that I'm just commenting on because it relates to the movie. Well, here's an article from Forbes. Netflix, the madness in the end was ridiculous. But it says here, Elon Musk on the phone with a hitman killing off YouTubers and newsletter writers to supposedly influence elections is insane. So even the reviewer on Forbes concluded that that was obviously meant to reference Elon Musk. Like, they don't even hide it. That's why I say in Civil War, it's Kamala Harris killing Donald Trump. In A Man in Fool, the Charlie Coker character is based on Trump, and the mayor of Chicago in the movie is based on Obama. Obama, the mayor, he sets into motion the events that destroy the Trump character, who dies at the end. Interestingly, in Megalopolis, the mayor is the one who orchestrates the assassination attempt on the Trump character. So two examples that I think are parallel with completely unrelated movies, but who are portraying the same real world people in the subtext. Tuna X325 wanted to correct me. He said, Tucker said a demon, not an alien. It's true. Tucker Carlson did say a demon scratched his back at night and that he has scars to prove it, and he was bleeding. He ruled out the possibility it was one of his dogs because he sleeps with his 4 dogs. He didn't suggest, even his wife, it could have been her. But no, he said it was demons. But I also have to remind you that Tucker Carlson has been saying for some time that aliens are demons and they're in league with the Democrats. So if Tucker said he was scratched by aliens, he was scratched by demons, or he was scratched by demons, he was scratched by aliens. He doesn't make a distinction. Unless there's a different classification. How do you explain that? How do you reconcile this? Aliens and demons? Can demons get on flying saucers? I don't understand how you can make a distinction. And one of my points I've been making is that these are constructs. So aliens are angels that atheists will believe in. And the shapers of our paradigm need us to be believers, and they need us to believe in higher powers, intercessors, saviors even. The Nate Waitley said, you can fake blowing off a head with only a matter of minutes of edits and additions. Imagine how good professionals of the era with total control of the scene, with the original intent being to fool. Oh yeah, we were talking about Kennedy and how he wasn't shot by Oswald but by Stanley Kubrick, and it was simply a movie. And what we saw was likely a Muppet. And the head explosion was a squib activated by Jackie Kennedy, who pulled the string. And then you see her climbing onto the back of the car to get the canister. Like, they did multiple takes. And if you don't believe me, Jackie Kennedy was really into special effects. If you didn't know, there's an article on Vanity Fair that came out a month ago that just came out. And the footage hasn't all leaked, but we have some still shots. But exactly 2 months before his fake assassination, JFK and Jackie Kennedy filmed a home movie. And they involved the Secret Service, where they faked the assassination of JFK in his own home. Covered him in Heinz 57. The article is called, Why Did JFK Stage His Own Murder in a James Bond-inspired spy film 2 months before his assassination. Unbelievable. Why did this take until 2024 to get out? And to me, this just speaks to the unseriousness of it all. Like, these two knew that they were going to clown the world. They're clowning around at home. The Secret Service agent that was in charge of security on 11/22/63 was there dumping ketchup on JFK 2 months before for a dumb movie. And I want to see it. So yes, obviously, according to Nate Waitley, yeah, it's 100%. The JFK assassination falls into the category of fakeable. And no one saw it live. You have to remember, the video wasn't even released for like 12 years. It wasn't broadcast. Mike S. says, do you not believe in any higher powers? Well, I don't believe in aliens. Don't believe in unicorns. I don't believe in AI. Like, what higher power do you believe in? And more importantly, though, our discussion here really focuses on separating what we know from what we can merely assert to believe. And we're excluding from our conversation supernatural causes. So, for example, eerie coincidences in the entertainment that seem to foreshadow a future news event. Am I going to rule in the possibility a higher power did that? No, it's a logical flaw. It's fallacious. Man did it. Prove me wrong. And if you can't, then you kind of have to recognize that we have I think, a firmer grasp on the facts here. So let me get to this. I really want to get to this Back to the Future. Now, the synchro mystics do great research. They really do. They do a lot of work. They watch the movies like I do. They comb through it, and they find the details that give away what you might consider to be, media foreshadowing, hints about what's going to be faked in the future. But for the longest time, their whole analysis was hamstrung by the fact that they assumed that the future events foreshadowed were real. If you operate with that presupposition, then everything becomes ominous. And I think it kind of leads one to try to explain it. Like, what kind of evil people would tell us 30 years in advance that they're going to kill a bunch of people in New York? And they build off of this. And now they've built up this narrative, this myth of it being something like warlocks and alchemy, revelation of the method, all kinds of interesting ways of trying to explain away these consistent reveals of something at work engineering these big events. And I don't dispute that we are looking at evidence of the engineering of our fake news. In other words, our history is being fabricated day by day. That's what fake news is. But the fabricators fabricate it so far in advance that they have what you would consider to be foreknowledge. But it's foreknowledge about what they're going to fake. And it's given away in all of the media. It's actually pervasive, it's systemic, it's intrinsic to what entertainment is. The entertainment that you experience when you watch a movie is actually just a side effect of the brainwashing. So here's an example. Let's go back. This is a clip from Red Pill Drifter. Now, I disagree vehemently with his conclusions, but his research is top-notch. So I'm going to just play something here to show you some examples of how concerted and how precise this process is, this whole synchronization of entertainment and future psyops.
For a specific amount of time.
What comedian is?
Find out in 30 years!
What comedian is?
Find out in 30 years!
The walk is the reveal of the 9/11 warning given.
Okay, so here we have a scene. The Twin Pines Mall is where the terrorist attack happens, and it corresponds to the Twin Towers. And there's a scene where Doc is wiring a tower, and he's given this message about 30 years. So if you go from the movie Back to the Future, 30 years in the future, you end up at the release date of a movie about this tightrope walker wiring the Twin Towers. And back and forth, there are numerous references connecting that movie and Back to the Future and the theme of the Twin Pines Mall correlating to the Twin Towers and an impending terror attack. It's actually rather in-depth, and I'm just going to play a few more seconds, but just to show you how these aren't just anomalous, random things that you could cherry pick. These are actually coherent narratives that are evident in multiple pieces of, multiple examples, not just movies, but it's in the video games, it's in the literature. It's concerted messaging. But this is not something to mystify. This wasn't done by a higher power. This isn't done by wizards casting spells. This is actually propaganda and advertising, but done in a very covert manner. I mean, it's in your face, but it's so subtle.
What's with the wire?
The walk is about a plot to rig a giant wire to the Twin Towers. So Marty records the warning while Doc is rigging the wire to the tower. Marty tells Doc he will understand the warning in 30 years.
Find out in 30 years.
30 years later, the director makes a movie about rigging a wire to a tower, the Twin Towers, because the warning within Marty's letter is about a terrorist attack at the Twin Towers.
What's with the wire? What's with the wire? What's with the wire? What's with the wire?
After rigging this wire, the tower strike takes place, and a Marty McFly from the future runs out onto the scene. He has just time traveled here from October 2015, the release date of The Walk. But in The Walk, standing on top of the Twin Towers, is Marty McFly.
Looking like a jumper. And the character in the movie, who's not Michael J. Fox, is dressed exactly like Marty McFly, head to toe. It's the same wardrobe. And then, as he shows you here, at the very scene where Doc and Marty are talking, there's a pretty obvious 9/11 built into it after the clock tower is struck. And it's in the forms of the flaming tracks from the car and then the 9 on the sign.
While the other Marty stands inside a giant flaming 9/11 in the wake of a tower strike. While simultaneously across town, another Marty witnesses a terrorist attack take place at the Twins, which are actually the Twin Towers, a fact we learned from the secretly placed Twin Towers movie released on October 2015. This movie is actually The Walk, which is why it has Marty McFly standing on top of the Twin.
Now, one way to make sense of all this is to keep in mind the concept of fictional universes. So a fictional universe is an internally consistent closed system of narratives and stories and characters like the Marvel universe, which is not necessarily compatible with the Warner Brothers universe. You couldn't have Bugs Bunny and Magneto. So you have these various fictional universes that are internally consistent. I would contend that the mainstream media exists within a fictional universe. And all of its fictions, all of its propaganda, all the fake news is assumed to be real. And they reference one another. The mass shooters all plagiarize each other's manifestos. They reference each other, like, oh, this shooter reminds us of this one. Oftentimes, and we pointed this out, they'll use dates, anniversaries, all kinds of ways to reference other shooters, other events, reiterating these themes. So all these movies that contain predictive programming exist within such a fictional universe. So there's a subtext to everything, what I call the meta script, that does connect it all. It's the bigger story. That story is our history, as in the compilation of fake news day by day. And our fake news has consequences. If you think about it, how many fake news stories have been given a pass since we've been paying attention to the masses? Well, all of them, because they believe it all, even if we don't. So we've been monitoring the situation as a think tank for years. So let's just say 5 or 6 years of observing fake news. Well, that collective body of fake news is our shared history. And we have to just acknowledge how faked it all is. And the history fakers who have taken control over time and space in this way, I mean, Orwell mentions this about how who controls the present controls the past. Or who controls the past controls the future, who controls the present controls the past. Well, how do you control the present? Well, you have narrative control of the media. It's pretty much totalitarian in its scope, but it's not evident because it seems so fragmented, but it's monolithic. It's exceedingly monolithic. The level of uniformity is actually kind of striking, considering how we have this appearance of wide diversity of thought, but it all does fit within their parameters. Another thing to add to this about control over history and time is history is written by the conquerors, or in our case, the programmers. And it's sort of the same thing. So I'm not going to play too much more of this. I'm just pointing out that there are researchers who go deep and find the nuance in our collective programming material. Where they go wrong is they think these events are real. And that adds a level of complexity to it. And then they have their explanations as to why they would do these horrible things and tell us. So they're starting off on a faulty premise, but I will use their research happily. But beyond that, it's of limited value. Let's see here. Looks like someone has brought in a barrel full of wrenches. Appreciate the support. So Ted Stryker has brought this in. Culty Talk, Lasers, Henrik, Emma Lou, Daniel Morris have all received Blue Wrench Lodge member wrenches, which means that you're going to be a moderator. You can ban trolls on site. Eddie F says, we are victims. Do not believe there are chemicals in the food. I would say define chemicals. Roxy W says, I like your take on AI just being a tool but can be kept in the toolbox. Yeah, AI is it's a labor-saving device. It does the hard work of thinking, of aggregating and organizing information, and then, or rather taking the complex and simplifying it, much like search engines do. It's a labor-saving device. If anybody should fear it, it'd be those who fear the public becoming exceptionally educated and literate and self-aware. It's empowering it's a leveling thing, actually. It's leveling. It's not disempowering, but quite the opposite. AI is not going to take your job, but the person who has your same skill set and then augments it with AI will take your job. It's a tool. It's a force multiplier. It has too many uses to be dismissive or even fearful of it. Like, why would you fear a word processor? More people will be able to publish. But I think that there's a demonization that has kind of gone into it for some time. It mostly emanates from the right, the phobia attached to AI. Musk has fed into this. But AI is a hoax. Like, AI is like, I had this article earmarked because of this. Because I realized a lot of people still believe in AI. Let me go ahead and pull that article up. I think it was, yeah, this is the one. This is from a blog, and I put a link to it. The Tyranny of Appearances in AI. The Mechanical Turk is an old story about a fake mechanical Turk that amazed people in the 18th century. It was a human-sized chess player sitting near a cabinet with a chessboard on top of it. For years, it was exhibited as an automaton, playing chess against players from around the world. Now, of course, it had a human operator beneath it, but this fooled people for a long time. It fooled people. It fooled Napoleon. Now, this reminds me of the Optimus robots that Musk was sending around, and people are talking to these robots. They didn't know there was a human operator communicating to them behind it. AI has mechanical Turk syndrome. Today, AI means looking for the magic automaton, but we're still stuck at appearances instead of what it really is. There are some signs that the market for machine-based intelligence is in its infancy, especially in terms of the understanding of it by the general public. Like the Turk, but for real, these days, the two most popular feats are the AlphaGo machine, the first machine to beat a human at real-size Go, and the bot by OpenAI that can beat human players at Dota 2. What these examples have in common is that they don't actually operate in real life, but in the fantasy universe of a game. Anyway, this article goes on just to suggest that the mechanical Turk was never real and it fooled a lot of people, and in a way that we're sort of looking at an analogous hoax, the way it's being sold to the public. That it's a little early to ascribe any agency or supernatural or superhuman or beyond man's capabilities to the AI. It's just a tool. There's the Hollywood version of it that I think has been kind of taking control of the narrative, where people are legitimately worried about it. Like, it's not Skynet. And it reminds me, Gaia. Remember the WEF had their global AI initiative, or the Global AI Action Alliance? World Economic Forum launches Gaia to advance the promise of responsible artificial intelligence. I thought this was interesting because they're talking about connecting everybody in the world to this global AI, and the Earth god is Gaia. And I thought this was intriguing because I was just watching, when this came out, Avatar 2 about the moon Pandora, which is sentient, and the indigenous on Pandora can communicate with it like a collective brain. And what you find out in Avatar 2 is that Gaia was conscious, but we killed her. The West, we killed Gaia. That's why we have to go to Pandora. And we don't recognize Pandora's sentience when we kill Pandora too. That was the whole narrative behind the Avatar films. So it is interesting here that the WEF is talking about bringing Gaia to life. Let me play this clip. Someone had mentioned it. This is Homestead. So Homestead is a movie coming out on December 20th.
Everyone wondered how the world broke.
We're under attack.
So America's under attack. It's Angel Studios. Homestead is an intense post-apocalyptic family survival drama about an ex-Green Beret. He had a job as the head of security at an elaborate prepper compound called the Homestead. Now, this is interesting. I bet there's going to be a lot of anti-right-wing, anti-homesteader, anti-prepper stuff in here. As the world crumbles, they face resource wars, ideological conflict, and chaos reigns. But what you have here on the screen, if you're looking, is on their TV. They're watching it on TV, which is also notable. You know, Leave the World Behind is about everyone going into the bunkers because the nuke. And the anagram that we've pointed out with Leave the World Behind is Behold the End War Live. And this makes perfect sense when you look at the character Rose, the Donnie Darko character, who goes into the bunker. She's the survivor. And she's able to watch from down below. So Behold the End War Live basically means to me that when they do this, we're all going to be home watching it on TV. So here you are watching people watching the nuke on TV.
Are you scared?
So it's one of these movies. They're all kind of redundant at this point. Okay, let's continue. Mike S. says, AI doesn't have a connection to the creator. It's made by man, only has the consciousness man can give it. Sure. But I guess that's really what it comes down to, though, is that it's largely been misrepresented, like a lot of things. You don't have to worry about it, except as it being a competitive advantage. You should worry about it if you're not using it and you're in a field that is adopting it, and what field isn't. Okay, so we've been talking about people celebrating the CEO killer, his resemblance to Joker Sarnaff, the Boston bomber, and also Donnie Darko. Drone invasions. We'll continue to talk about that. We got into the 9/11 predictive programming in in Back to the Future. And AI Mechanical Turks. There's about 250 people listening on the video streams, and easily about 2 or 3 dozen on TuneIn and Paranormal Radio and Odyssey. So we're probably close to 300. If somebody would like to call in, the number is on the screen, 505-510-4226. I'm interested in people's opinions as to how the final experiment is going to change the conversation about cosmography, cosmology, and mass mind control. If flat earthers go to the South Pole and see a 24-hour sun, are you going to start believing in SpaceX and Elon Musk and mice on the outside of rockets going to the ISS? Catch up on my notes. There's quite a lot here. By the way, that movie about the nuking of Los Angeles will be out December 20th. So whatever's going to happen won't happen until after the movie. That's just a general rule. Like when I saw that Oppenheimer was scheduled for, was it 2023 or whatever, I was like, okay, we're going to have to wait for the nuke. And my prediction for the nuke is 2025, and here's why. In Dark Knight Rises, Batman tells the character who's with him, who has no mask on, to wear a mask. And his friend says, "I don't have to wear a mask, I'm not afraid." To which Batman says, "It's not for you, it's to protect the people that you love." Which is a line out of 2020. So the movie comes out years before 2020, and he seems to foreshadow it with that line. And then he hands the character a little COVID ball, a spiked ball. Looks like a COVID, but it's a smoke bomb. He says, "Count to 5 and throw this." So he counts to 5, and he throws the COVID ball. So I took this to mean 2020, count to 5, and it creates a mushroom cloud. Now, we had already determined this, made these connections that, 5 years after COVID, the mushroom cloud. Then we find out that the director of that Batman movie is the director of, or would be the director of, Oppenheimer. The one who will be credited, in my mind, with having faked the nuke when they pull it off. So I'm thinking the countdown was 2020. It's going to happen in 5 years. My prediction, based on Batman, Christopher Nolan, and Oppenheimer. Isabel Ann says the next big PSYOP is coming next year, 2025. It's not too far away. We're talking less than a month. BLM calls for riots over Daniel Penny manslaughter charge being dismissed. This is all predictable. I don't believe this was a real event. I mean, I have no reason to. If you do, what do you know that we don't? Because we come from a position here of informed disbelief. And I'm always happy to take my informed disbelief and put it on the scale. And then you put your low information, I saw it on TV belief right there. And see if your low info belief weighs more than my informed disbelief. And we'll see. We'll weigh it on its merits. So Jordan Neely's not dead. It's a big hoax. But let me play this. This is the family of Jordan Peele. Highly upset for a lot of reasons. You know how a lot of right-wingers have said that Derek Chauvin OD'd? That George Floyd OD'd, that Derek Chauvin was innocent. Now, real or fake, how you respond to a story may reveal something about your politics, your character, your level of empathy, your ability to read the room. But a lot of people are like, no, Chauvin was innocent. So they're somewhat justifying what may not have been justifiable. But they're going with a controlled narrative that one side's going to say he was killed by systemic racism. The other side is going to say he was killed by his own hand. And you could blame it on open borders or something because fentanyl. Well, that has kind of resurfaced here where some people are saying, well, Jordan Neely is responsible for his own death. He brought it on himself, that Daniel Penny's a hero. And you're seeing the response to it. And it does seem to be that they're calling for some kind of action. Not that I expect anything to happen from a simple call out. Not this time of year. This is not riot weather. But it's something to look forward to when things warm up, possibly.
I stand here heartbroken because I have to hug a father who knows that the murderer of his son will most likely go free.
Now that's Monday. That's Monday. Daniel Penny had the manslaughter charge drop, but there's something else that's about to go down on Monday, and I think it's going to be diminished. We'll see. But there should be a certain amount of fury attached to this event. Now, I have a feeling this is a big one, though. And the reason why is that you can connect the Jordan Neely death to Jordan Peele's movie Get Out, which was inspired, Jordan Peele, who also directed Nope, which was inspired specifically by the George Floyd killing. And then more recently, and we talked about this a couple months ago, I watched Monkey Man, which was produced by Jordan Peele, about a boxer who wears the mask of Onaman, the monkey god, and how this reoccurring theme has been the rage virus, symbolized by like the apes or the monkeys being tested on 28 Days Later, or the monkey god archetype, or the movie Monkey Man, where he's this fighter. And that movie happened to come out on 3/11, which is the pandemic date. So we have attached, in many ways, the mind virus, the violence that comes from the mind viruses, to this reoccurring symbol, or I guess this archetype, So Jordan Peele's handprints are all over the Jordan Neely psyop, and it's all attached to the killer ape or the rage virus, which is what it symbolizes. Even in Nope, which was inspired by the George Floyd event, you had this chimpanzee ripping people apart. So it's a reoccurring theme. So it's all about the rage triggered by the visual of the atrocity. So in 28 Days Later, which was written by the guy who directed Civil War, which I referenced earlier, in 28 Days Later, they're experimenting on apes, making them watch violence on TV screens until they change and they create this rage virus. It actually messes with their brains. And this also alludes to Elon Musk and Neuralink, which has been associated with experiments on the brains of apes. And then, of course, Elon Musk and X, Disease X, or Twitter, which is the vector for the mind viruses that they're conditioning us to want to be quarantined from. So it's all fairly well connected. So you see this outrage that they've generated. And of course, not only do they have the outrage at the way this person was killed and how this person's been lionized as a hero, but Daniel Penny has been made into a hero on the right. Like, basically, they're calling for more Daniel Penny. So this is a very divisive character. Let me play this clip here.
Who has to look in the face of a jury that no matter the facts, no matter the expert witnesses, no matter the people yelling on that train that day to let Jordan go, you will kill him. They will not find a white man guilty of killing a black man in modern day America.
So there you have it. There's the underlying story. But this is what I'm pointing out here is that there's the surface level story, but then there's the subtext, and it's all symbolic. Even the subway. There's a reason why the subway was the opening scene in Joker, where he kills those rich guys, because it's all about kill the rich, class warfare, like kill the CEO. It was kill the rich on all the newspapers, because the rich have turned you into a clown. That's why the Joker, he's rendered into a clown. And so then the clowns rise up. It represents the oppressed, the poor. So the subway represents that underclass that could rise up and threaten the power elite. The Batman movie also starts in a subway, but in that case, Batman is beating up the Jokers. So Batman was like a Daniel Penny in that instance. And so left versus right, they both inhabit on the political horseshoe these different, this class warfare thing. One side is defending the power elite. The other side is on the side of the oppressed. So this fits into that narrative perfectly. The power structure and the idea of the martyr. And of course, this is another martyr. And I'll also say Jordan Neely's name, Neely, I think is a deliberate callback to George Floyd's death, which is all about the kneeling. And then BLM adopting kneeling after. It's all symbolic, very punny. They make full use of all the tricks or the techniques of good literature, specifically foreshadowing, many allusions and others. But let me play a few more seconds of this.
This is no different than Jim Crow. This looks like a picture out of the picture book when you look at that anonymous jury. We have baby boomers who were there doing Jim Crow on this jury. We have young people who are looking at Daniel Penny as a hero.
Now, correlating this to a lynching is also significant because George Floyd's catchphrase was, "I can't breathe," is about asphyxiation. And the "I can't breathe" has been extended in many ways, even to environmentalism, climate justice, the atmosphere. We can't breathe because capitalism. So ultimately, this is all an indictment of the West and systemic racism and the existing power structure. And one of the things that she reiterates, or she says at the end very clearly, is that she's worried that the system is unchangeable.
And then you ask us to love this country. America hates black people, and we see it from that jury pool.
Very heated rhetoric. So that's something to look forward to on Monday. And she did suggest there should be riots again. Just another in the list of martyrs building this case. Let me go through your comments. Today's the 83rd anniversary of Pearl Harbor. Yes, that's right. 12/7. Hawks Bottle says, Tim, do you think the true nature of the external realm will be disclosed or just more? Well, that's a good question. Will it be disclosed? I don't know if you want to call in and talk about it. I mean, I'm just going to withhold. We have less than a week until we have a contingent of the flatties and the glurfs simultaneously observing to see if there's a 24-hour sun. Is it a question here? But yeah, phones are definitely open. Busy56 said, Synchro Morpheus posted a picture of CEO Killer next to Robin Hood movie poster from 2018. Uncanny. Okay, so I'm glad you brought that one up. Because Robin Hood is, what's his central theme? You take from the rich, give to the poor. Redistribution of wealth. Marxist class warfare. Kill the rich. So that's also interesting, that the hood. So you're talking about an icon, a symbol of the poor, the oppressed. This is why I think it's fake. That's why I'm saying it's fake. Joker, Robin Hood, it fits it fits the narratives too well. Infinite Plane Radio.
What up, my brother? Hello.
Hey, thanks for calling. Is this who is this? Was this Mike X? Mike S?
Mike S. I've been talking in your chat, having a pretty good experience there. Decided to talk to you.
Awesome. First time caller. Appreciate you calling in.
Cool.
So what do you think of this really quick? We're talking about the CEO shooter with the hood, and someone's compared him to Robin Hood. Do you think they've intentionally generated some kind of an icon or maybe even a folk hero or something in this?
Well, I've heard different things about the shooter. Some people say it's a actual legitimate case where somebody was denied an insurance claim and they got revenge. I would say it's maybe not that, because of the intricate way that he was able to case the bullets with the information that was like to get a message across. And I'm not sure if like the average person that's like mad at somebody would be able to do that, but I wouldn't say it's not possible.
Right.
Do you know what was labeled on the bullets?
Yeah, the whole deny, delay, and
Right.
and defer something about insurance claims, and he changed it to depose. And what struck me about that is that, yeah, that is a clear way to send a message, but is it standard practice for police to reveal the intimate details of an ongoing murder investigation to the general public? It just seems like it would go against
There
their
you go.
interests. So I'm thinking it seems like theater to me.
Right. Well, and that's kind of why I watch you, is because you default to theater, and I kind of agree with you on that most of the time. But unfortunately, whether it's theater or not, we still have the same situation. Like, there was a CEO that was killed, and it's probably going to be some copycats in the future.
Now, that's an interesting thing there, because like I'm still in the camp that if any of it seems scripted and fake, then it's likely that he wasn't really killed. But even if whether he was or wasn't, it really does arouse sentiment among the population. And we do see people organically just popping up on Twitter saying this is a good thing. So it is actually, this is what, it is all theater, but it does bring out the worst in people by design.
So why do you think they did this at this time? Why do you think they wanted people to kill a CEO?
I think it might be revolutionary fervor, because I was just watching The Madness, and I've been talking about that movie, where you have this tech billionaire financing neo-Nazis online. And one of the things they do with the movie is they have he's assassinated. So he's this evil CEO, he's assassinated, and it's actually seen as a good thing. It's a heroic thing that happened. So I'm looking at this as consistent. So like there's some messaging out there where it seems like they're building up sentiment, perhaps to stir up the left wing for the incoming Trump administration.
Okay, that's an interesting take. So you obviously know that Elon Musk is not like the hero that a lot of people believe him to be, right?
Oh, yeah, obviously he's part of the space program. So I look at him as somebody who's just high up in the in the mind control system, in the mind warfare. So he's part of the worldview warfare. That's why they gave him X. So he can be the excuse for leaking all these, or actually rather opening the floodgates to far right-wing extreme ideology in full view of the public. So no, he has a very specific and calculated role, I think, in destroying free speech. So no, I think he's totally a deceiver and an insider.
Yeah, definitely. I would say, obviously, especially if you've ever looked at the what NASA has been showing us for the past, I don't know, 50 years, and the people that believe in NASA are just, shuttled over to Elon Musk, like, oh, he's the new guy that we believe about outer space.
Yeah, you know what? That's a
But
good.
he's just,
That's a good point. I knew people who are skeptical of NASA, but they're like, well, he's private, and he's going to be working with the secret space program NASA was hiding. So yeah, instead of losing faith in the big system of lies, they're given an alternate person that they'll trust, and it's like it's just alternate lies. So yeah, Musk.
Well,
is,
his entire history was lies. He was the founder of PayPal, allegedly Tesla. He runs all these companies allegedly, and he's like a top 10 person in Diablo, and he's proud of being a top 10 person in Diablo, whatever it is, 3 or 4. So he's just a guy, right? He's a guy that we can look to and like, this guy's. We should think about this guy when we see this stuff happening. So I would say, obviously, if you're really in charge, you're not going to promote yourself on this world stage, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. I look at him as someone who is likely, you could consider him, and I even say this of Trump, to be glorified crisis actors. Like they're basically charged with,
that's interesting,
in a very performative way, executing certain actions on the world stage to advance big agendas. But I look at them entirely as puppets. These are not rogue. They're not operating under that's a misconception that I think a lot of people on the right specifically fall for. They think, oh, Trump's going against the system. Are you kidding me? Trump is the system.
Definitely. He's, and they've been beating us to death with this liberal progressive agenda for so long that people are like, is the government actually crazy? And like, oh no, we finally got somebody reasonable with Trump or whoever's in charge. And that's, the purpose of Trump, to, actually get people to continue to buy into the system. When my perspective about the system is that it is what it is. I mean, it is a control apparatus of human consciousness. I mean, that's all it is, and it's the purpose of it is to give you a lot of things that you think you want, and then basically you're allowed to believe in that thing. You're not allowed to believe in any other things besides that thing.
That sums it up pretty well. And I think you're right about this, because I look at like two poles. You got progressive utopianism, and then you have, I guess you would call it, like Make America Great Again. It's actually kind of like idealized past. So you have utopianism about the future, idealized past, progressive and traditional, left and right. And they have this tug of war going all the time, and no one's ever going to win. And that's the point. It's the perpetual war. So that's why I'm always taking the position of anti-anti as well as anti-pro. Like, I'm not going to be participating in this tug of war because I know it's rigged. But generally speaking, my take on it is that the mass media is actually an instrument of government, and it's worldwide, and it's monolithic.
Yeah, so I'm not trying to promote Joe Rogan, but he had a recent guest on. It was an Ashkenazi Jew, specifically. What was his name? He was like on the last one of the few podcasts he was just on, and he basically laid it all out, how there's non-government organizations that are funded by government that do the dirty work of the government. So the government can say, oh, we didn't do it. We didn't have anything to do with that. It was all these NGOs that we funded, but it wasn't us. What's the name? I got to tell you the name of the guy so you watch it. You have to watch this, I would say.
Yeah, I'll watch it. I'll listen to him when he has a guest on that I want to hear. And also, even if I don't agree with somebody or I think that they're totally controlled op or whatever it is, I listen to him anyway because I want to know what their audiences think. And the way you get into the heads of the
Yeah.
different compartments is you have to go to these pundits and hear the propaganda from the source.
So the guy's name was, what's the guy's name? Oh, hold on, I gotta click something. Mike Benz. Yeah, it's the most revelatory podcast that Joe Rogan has ever done because it actually goes into the mechanics of government and what they're really doing, and he focuses in a way that he's like, you know, negative about the Democratic Party, but I would say it for sure applies to the Republican Party too. And the way that he talks, he basically shows that democracy is a farce. It's a way to, have a structure that's in place where you're allowed to have all these government organizations that censor the internet. That's basically what his beef was. So you got this guy Mike Benz, Ashkenazi Jew, against the censorship of the internet. So it's an interesting.
Okay, it says here,
guess.
He was with the U.S. Department of State and a current executive director for the Foundation for Freedom Online. Yeah, I'll listen to it and I'll take some notes and listen to what he has to say because I think this is all very relevant.
It is, and I think like the way that the mainstream media is dying, you have sources like Joe Rogan who are the mainstream media these days.
Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah, he is sort of the default, and you have these big voices that are the default. My main critique of them is that they still operate within the universe of ideas shared by the mainstream, and maybe they're not allowed to, or they're too insulated, but they never go so far as to call out the big psyops. They can't.
You would never have a conversation on Joe Rogan about curvature. That would never happen.
Speaking of, what do you think is going to happen next week in Antarctica? Are you familiar with the final experiment?
Yeah, I'm very familiar, and I'm just like a silent voice. I don't care to be on Joe Rogan or anything. I wanted to talk to you because I've never talked to you, and I thought you have a lot of good the way that you look at things. I appreciate. So I think that the way that I understand this is that they're doing a what do they call it? They call it like the final experiment, right?
Yeah, they're calling it the final experiment. It's just an observation,
right.
But yeah.
So they say they're going down to Antarctica, right? And they say that if they see a sun in the sky for too long, that means the Earth is a globe, right? That's like the foreplay, or that's like what the guy who's in charge of it is going to say.
That is
right?
That is 100% how they framed it. It's an either or. It's either or, flat or round, and that is the determining factor. Yeah.
Right, and they're using the azimuthal equidistant map, obviously, because that's the most popular map, and it makes sense when you look at it from a way that you could look at it. I mean, there's only so many ways you could view the topography or whatever model you're using. Let's say you use a excuse me. Let's say you use a solar system model. Oh, Earth is like spinning around the sun. Yeah, you can use that model. But what they're trying to do is they're saying if there is a sun in the southern south hemisphere, right? They're saying that couldn't happen because the way that the flat Earth model works is that the sun rotates from the Tropic of Cancer to the to Capricorn or whatever. I don't really remember the bullshit.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
There's no actual evidence that's how the flat Earth map works.
Yeah, see, you nailed it. What you nailed here is this, and I've said this from the beginning. This is why we called it infinite plane. I was saying it's premature to settle on a model that you haven't tested or found more information for. So if you're critiquing the ball, it's because you don't feel like you have enough information. But if you automatically jump to a flat Earth model with no evidence to support it, then you're kind of grabbing onto a straw man. And right now, it's almost tantamount to a straw man argument where they get to define how it works and they get to define what discredits it. So, yeah, in my view, I'm still somewhat agnostic, and whatever they
Right.
see,
So,
yeah, it's not
so
going to.
I'm not a true believer in Flat Earth Dave or any person that actually has a model of the idea of where we live on, and I think I'm okay with that. And somebody like Flat Earth Dave, obviously, he has understanding of his model, and he proved it. He proved that his model is better than the heliocentric model. He's been on hundreds of podcasts. He's done it to like so many normies, and good for him. But I'm not sure that his model is actually the way the world works. So, to give you an example, there's many different models that people have come up with on the internet. I'm sure you're probably familiar with all of them. The first one I would bring up is FPG Angel.
Yes, I'm familiar.
You've seen it. You've seen his channel, yeah. So he has a very different model, and it has a different way that the sun works, and a different way that stars and everything works. Right? You've seen his model, right?
Yes, and I went to a conference, a Flat Earth conference. I knew Chris Pontius, who made these models. So I've been really involved in this conversation, and I've been critical of attaching oneself to a model and then building up towards it with cognitive bias and cherry picking. But I've always been open to different concepts of what it could be, because we've been trained on one thing. We don't have any concepts outside of it. So it gets into the realm of almost science fiction. But yeah, I
think that's actually kind of fun, because like the way I look at, like, why do I have to be tied down to believe that Dave Weiss, even though he has an app, why do I have to believe that his model is correct? I'm not allowed to. I'm okay with being unsure about the model of the Earth that I live on.
Yeah, the either or fallacy is like it has to be one or the other. And I always point out here is that no, you can suspend judgment until you have more facts, which just means you have to be comfortable with question marks. But our skepticism is, I think, well founded, because we're basing that on lies in media, propaganda in media,
right,
and the space fakery.
Right. And
so we have a reason.
When I talk to normies about stuff like this, I try to talk to them about trust, and I try to, like, that's like the easiest way to, like, talk to people about. You don't have to bring up any flat Earth topics or anything. You talk to them about trust, right? You say, you believe this because you trust this, right? And they're like, no, I don't trust it. I believe it because it's true. Like, no, you believe it because you trust the people that told you that, right? And like, yeah, of course I trust them. They're scientists. And that's basically where we're at, is people trust people because of whatever reason they want to trust people. And unfortunately, there's a lot of untrustworthy sources in NASA and in the government and in the idea that we're supposed to have an accurate view of where we live. A lot of people are lying to us, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's the main thing to me. It's the implied argument from authority carried by the screen. That's why I say that we are on the other side of the screen. We don't trust what's on it implicitly. We have a social distance, like 6 feet away from the screen. That's what
6 feet away from the screen.
That's what, yeah, because like everybody lives with their nose pressed up against it, and we're the ones 6 feet away from it. And then the people who are too deep into it are in the box. But I'm like, no, you got to be a skeptic.
It's actually horrible, because like an idealized version of life, you would trust your elders, you would trust the life that you've been given, you would trust the people that tell you the truth. But we live in like this weird globalized world. Even the term is a lie, and we're supposed to trust these people, because what other choice do you have? You can't go up in the sky and prove that there's planets out there or whatever they're telling you. You can't prove anything about it for yourself, so you're forced to trust them, right? And that's where we're at. We got all these scientists, like really smart guys, going to astronomy school, and they're trusting that everything that they've been told is true. all the time.
Yeah, that's the main thing. It comes down to trust, which is a way of getting a hearsay and say, basically, secondhand accounts, and then taking it as an authority. That is something that you should see in religion, not in media. You should have faith in your church or your religion. At least it's acceptable there because there's an information gap. You're not going to be able to bridge that till you die. But when it comes to news media, we shouldn't rely on faith and trust. We should be able to rather have the facts and appraise those facts. But we've been trained.
Well, there's an information gap because you can't go to outer space, right?
That's where they have us.
Every organization tells you what happens when you go to outer space, and you have to have trust in them. Otherwise, why would you believe them?
Diana South in the comments mentioned Space Cadets. There was a TV show in the UK. It was 10 episodes long where they had 5 people convinced they were in low Earth orbit. And the way they succeeded is they had 5 people that were actors pretending to be fellow astronauts. So you had 5 people who thought they were going to space, 5 who were actors pretending like they believed it. And by having...
Oh, that sounds funny. What post a link to that. That sounds funny.
Space Cadets. And when they pull the walls down, the people who were tricked cry because they thought they were in space. And all the audience is laughing at them. And I'm thinking, this is the elite laughing at us whenever they land on the moon, whenever they perform some...
So I posted it in your chat. You didn't respond to it, but I think it's a actual good point that I had. What's his name? God, I forgot his name. But there's a band called 30 Seconds to Mars. You've heard of the band, right? They're pretty popular.
30 Seconds to Mars. I personally have not. I'm sure somebody listening has.
Yeah. Who is the guy? It was like a famous guy that's in the band.
Oh, okay, that guy. Yeah, I know. I recognize his face.
Yeah. So he has this band called 30 Seconds to Mars.
Jared Leto.
Jared Leto. Yeah. So he actually, produced like a good, he's like a good musician. There's nothing wrong with that. But what I got from his, I think it was disclosure. I think that there is a place called Mars that some people can go to in a very short time. Like, I'm talking to Infinite Plane Society, so I'm assuming you could get what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I think I know what you're alluding to. Go on.
Right, like there, you could just like take a plane there in 30 seconds and be on Mars, whatever they would call Mars, right?
Look, I've entertained the notion because you know who's behind the underground tunnels and the Hyperloop. Well, Elon Musk is credited with coining the phrase Hyperloop. So the idea of going through a tunnel to an underground Mars base has crossed my mind. I said, Mars could be under China, Mars could be under Nevada, and you just get into a Hyperloop that feels like a rocket launch, and you end up on your quote Mars base where it's a total Truman Show, but dressed up like the Red Planet. And so it would be a 30-second trip to Mars, and they would tell you, hey, we're not going the old-fashioned way. We're going to go through a wormhole. So you're just going to get there in 30 seconds. And they could... yes.
And this guy could actually believe that he goes to Mars in 30 seconds.
Exactly. Where they could have, just like in Space Cadets, the TV show, they could have the people who are running the show and then a control group who are totally duped. Like Truman in the Truman Show, they literally believe it. And so that's how you get true believers to do the dirty work of the... programmers.
All right, so I already talked to you about FPG Angel.
Yes,
You've watched them?
Yes.
All right, the second channel is Awake Souls, Ronnie and Jason. You watch that channel?
Oh yeah, I know Ronnie and Jason. I haven't talked to them in a little while, but I used to follow them. I would like to catch up with them before.
They're antagonistic to people, and I think that's to their detriment. But they believe that they know the truth about the way that the realm works.
Johnny and Ronnie, for people who don't know, they're simulationists, but they believe that they're the 2 witnesses in the Bible. And I think Ronnie even doxed his mom because she wouldn't convert. So, but we're familiar with them, but they have this pretty...
I'm not saying they're good guys. I'm saying they have a model of the earth.
They have a model,
right?
And they call it...
Right.
What do they call it? It's sort of like they try to explain the sun, and it has nothing to do with the rotating one sun going around the North Pole, but it's more like maybe you can explain it better, but I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, they have a different. They have some Pac-Man in their viewpoint, and I'm not against the idea that Pac-Man is part of our reality, even though it's poo-pooed upon because it's just a stupid video game. That could not happen in our reality because we're physical characters on a board. Well, I'm not saying that they're right or wrong. I'm saying that they have a model, right? So I'm saying that they have a different model than Jeranism does, like with the azimuthal equidistant, which may be true. I have no idea if it's true or not. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm not saying they're good. I'm just saying they have a different model, right?
Like I said, I could probably reach out to them. I have them on my Zoom contact list. I'll try to talk to them before the final experiment because I'd like to know what they think about it. I'm assuming
you should. That would be probably good content.
I would assume they imagine it to be some kind of a ruse to shut down the debate without including anything outside of the domed flat Earth thing versus the globe. Like, in other words, it could be a ruse.
Well, I don't know how much you've interacted with Jeranism or Austin. I tend to agree that at least Austin seems genuine, if not like I don't think he should. He kind of gets way into the globe Earth model on his critiques, but I'm not really. I guess I don't really want to talk about that. I would say Jeranism and Austin were good candidates to go to see what happens at the South Pole, right?
Well, I'm glad they went with Austin. He seems to be a lot more involved in the conversation these days, and he's a better debater. He has a great understanding of logical fallacy, and the thing is, he goes to their court. He tries to debate their model on its merits using their scientific explanations, which I understand his.
Yeah.
But the problem with his approach, and it's not just him, is that he doesn't include or he doesn't attack the special effects. And I understand that's not his strong point, or maybe he's ignoring it. But ultimately, that's, I think, a major blind spot. But I think he's the right person to go.
You don't think he like talks about how NASA is all like CGI and all special effects?
Well, here's the thing. In these different debates, it's not brought up, like in these controlled debates. People like McToon or Fight the Flat Earth, they don't even go there. They don't talk about media fakery. So they're stuck. I think it's kind of a limited hangout in a way. But he's going. He was on Tim Pool.
You don't think Austin is a limited hangout. I think he's legitimate. I think he believes what he says and says what he believes.
Sure, but however, flat versus round as a debate is a limited hangout, and it excludes.
Okay, I agree with you. You believe it's like a realm, right? Where we can't really psychologically dissect it as a flat plane.
I don't think we can artificially limit our options to what NASA provides and what some people have scraped together without investigating first. So I think the debate's always been too contrived. But he was on Tim Pool, and he seemed to indicate that he doesn't exactly know what his response is going to be should he confront a 24-hour sun. But my point has been, even if he goes and sees it, we can't just automatically say, oh, now therefore everything NASA has shown us thus far is real. Now all these rocket launches are suddenly going to space for real.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, what I'm trying to get across is that there's different models that are available that would explain a different perspective on where we live other than the azimuthal equidistant map, right?
Yeah,
That's my perspective. And if they're going to Antarctica and they see the southern sun and it disproves the azimuthal equidistant map, it doesn't mean that the Earth is a globe. I mean, I guess some people will see it as a win, right? Because they're like, wow, it couldn't happen on a flat Earth. It only happens on a globe, right? And that's their prerogative. Well, okay, I talked to you about FPG Angel, Awake Souls, running Jason. The next person hasn't posted a video in 8 years, but I was consistent with watching him. His name is Free Energy. Free Energy, and he replaced the E with in energy with an A. Have you ever watched this channel?
No, I just bookmarked it though. I'll take a look.
So it's Free Energy with an A.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah, it's an interesting perspective of the way that the Earth could work, and I'm not saying that I know how the Earth works. I'm saying I appreciate people that are interested in the topic.
Yeah, this is what attracted me to it. I always thought it was useful for people to posit different alternatives. I mean, I used to sell the flat Earth map, knowing, the one that says the flat Earth map of the real world, Australia, not down under. I said it doesn't matter if it's accurate or not. There could be more land. It could be wrong, but we don't have anything other than what we've been shown. So our imagination isn't even primed to contemplate outside of the ball. So I'm like, think outside of the ball. And so all these different concepts make sense. I mean, I'm of the opinion right now that whatever it is, I think it's a little more complex. Like I think I think we're a bigger part of it.
Think outside of the ball is like a good phrase. Like think outside of the ball.
Well, think about how your entire life we've been inundated in just as generations of science fiction where we have not been shown anything outside of the balls in space paradigm. So it's difficult for people to conceptualize anything but that. And so what I was just saying, as sort of a pushback, you have to kind of contemplate other ideas. And that's why I like science fiction. I like the idea of the hypothetical, entertaining hypotheticals. And that's what we're doing when we're looking at models.
I love entertaining hypotheticals. I think that's the funnest thing you could do. Hypothetical. Is there a center to the flat Earth? Are we allowed to go there? That's a good question.
Yeah. What do you think of? Have you seen the map from Mercator of the North Pole, where he claims in a letter to John Dee that in the center of the North Pole is a black magnetic mountain, 33 miles in circumference?
Yeah, I don't have the strength or the the money to do something like that. I gotta be honest. If I was like really rich, I probably would go to the North Pole. I really would, because that's how much I care about like understanding life itself. And I think there's a lot of probably agencies that don't want me to know about what's happening in the North Pole. Not to mention the South Pole. Do you know how many shipping vessels have been arrested trying to go to the South Pole? It's unbelievable. I'll try to give you a link. Like, there's like shipping vessels off the coast of Australia that decide to go to Antarctica, and they're just like, they go down there and like they're captured by military ships. They're like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "I'm just going." And they're like, "Oh, you're not allowed to go down here, so we have to like give you an escort home."
Have you heard of a series called His Dark Materials, which I think follows it's part of like this series, but His Dark Materials is interesting because it has this world where when you go to what we'd consider to be the North Pole, as you go north, you actually enter into this other realm across the multiverse. And that in this other realm, the people are, psychic. It's a little more magic than technological. And that we're considered to be more or less kind of dumbed down compared to them. And they happen to kidnap a lot of our children and extract some kind of soul energy from them. But it's called His Dark Materials.
Well, fuck them. I don't want my children. My children will not be kidnapped.
Well, it's interesting because it ties into this like adrenochrome story that was popular around the time. But one of the things about His Dark Materials is that it's about infinite worlds, a multiverse, and how you access it by going north. True. So I'm like, well, we take a lot for granted. And so like I'm just saying I need more information to have hard conclusions. But
yeah, well, do you have a boat to go to the North Pole recently?
Well, I think the best thing we could do is we build a consensus of people who want to see something done, and we crowdfund it. And if somebody wants to go north,
All right.
we fund it.
You're the guy that actually put up the Mark Sargent billboard, right?
The Research Flat Earth billboard, and then we financed Mad Mike Hughes, world's greatest daredevil. He launched his rocket in 2018 with Research Flat Earth on the side. We got behind a few different initiatives to try to make something happen with this conversation. So if anybody's going to get an expedition to see if there's a big black rock in the middle of it all, it's going to be us.
All right. Well, I would I wouldn't donate to you. I'd be on your vessel. If you had a vessel that could go to the North Pole, I'd be on it. And I'm actually an asset to some of that. But it's you're never going to do it.
I would say, look, we financed a daredevil whose plan was to go to space. And this wasn't just a plan. It was something that was being executed. It was actually in the process of being performed in front of the Science Channel's show Homemade Astronauts. So we're definitely serious about it. It's just a matter of do we know anybody willing to make these expeditions and go through all the hoops? And I honestly believe that if you have the will to do it, you can get people behind it, and you would have all of us, of course, amplifying it. And I would have an interest in it anyway, because I would send an IPR reporter, well, you, with a press pass, to the center of it all. Whatever you find, it's going to be a good story. So no, I would 100% be behind it.
Well, I'll be like first to sign up, because I like adventure, and I actually think that, why has no ship been to the North Pole? I mean, I guess they go to the North Pole and there's like climate declination, and there's I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of shit.
Well,
but,
here's the thing. One thing that, people can say, well, it's just ice, or we see it, it's always moving. We saw it on TV. It's like, sure. But you got to explain to me why Gerardus Mercator, where we get our Mercator projection, why he seemed convinced enough of some big black rock in the middle to write a letter to John Dee, who is not a historically insignificant character, about this. So I just want to see if it's real.
Oh shit, there's a black rock in the North Pole?
Well, I'm not saying that there is, but the guy, Mercator, where we get our Mercator projection, he wrote a letter to John Dee. And he wrote here, he said, under the pole, there lies a bare rock in the midst of the sea. The circumference is 33 French miles, and it's magnetic stone. And so he has a drawing from 1620 you can look at. Now, many people say, oh, this is obviously fantasy. They didn't know, so they made something up. And I'm a little skeptical of those who are dismissing it, because you have one of the most well-known, foremost cartographers and explorers in the world producing a map based on what? Some kind of flight of fancy? I don't know. And then you look at all the symbolism with black rocks and the number 33. It's like it's very consistent with what we've seen anyway. So I'm kind of inclined. Also, John Dee. His involvement in this, I'm inclined to think there's something to it. So I don't know if you want to go.
Yeah. Listen, I'll pay $20,000 to go.
Well, we put it out there, so we'll be talking a lot in Discord, and if we build up the political will here to send somebody to the middle of it all, it'll be you for sure. And so we'll be talking about it. And I don't put it off the table as a possibility, especially after this Antarctica thing, which is going to be in about a week. So, well, hey, thanks for the call.
So, yeah, I guess like the way that they're trying to understand the Earth is they're saying that if we see the Antarctic sun, right, that means the Earth is not flat, right?
That's exactly what they're saying. And I'm saying, even if you grant him that, you can't suddenly say their space fiction is real. It doesn't equate. It doesn't follow. Not at all.
I agree.
But hey, this has been a great call. I appreciate the reference.
I'll talk to you later. I
Yes.
appreciate you talking to me, and I appreciate you having taking my phone call. I'll talk to you maybe sometime in the future. I'll talk to you. Take care, man.
Yeah, please call back anytime. Very interesting caller. All right, so we have FPV Angel. I'm going to have to reach out to Awake Souls and Free Energy spelled with an A. I have these links, which I'll be bookmarking. And I've always thought the journey to the north would be far more interesting. I was hoping that Quasi-Luminous would do it. Do you remember Quasi-Luminous? He started this disturbing trend. It went viral, where it was called Blood Over Intent. I almost don't want to look it up. So Quasi-Luminous was a plumber, of all things, who believed that at the center of the world, there was this black hole, and that you could jump into it, and you'd be rendered immortal, because that we are all dead right now. That we're already dead, we're in the land of the dead, and we don't know it. And to escape, you just get your compass and follow it north. You jump into the hole, and you achieve immortality. That's what I understood, like a big drain in the middle. That's why I think it's funny. He's a plumber. But anyway, this is his picture. And he changed his name from Quasi-Luminous to Saturn, and then he rebranded as Satan. Now, one of the things he started was, he said, if you're going to go to the center, you have to do a blood pact. He called it Blood Over Intent, where he said you have to state your intent to go to the North Pole and write it in blood. So I'm not going to play the videos because YouTube will ban us for it, because it's all self-harm. But you have people writing these promises to bring forth heaven on earth for the benefit of all. And it's wild. But hundreds, maybe thousands of people were all repeating this guy's blood oath and cutting themselves and putting it on YouTube. It got out of control. And all the while, Blood Over Intent, bizarre channel with many unnerving... Oh yeah, this is so bad. Vice.com covered it. He cuts his finger and bleeds onto a handwritten letter. The Blood Over Intent archives. Into the dark world of YouTube blood rituals, cracked.com. But he never went. Or maybe he never came back. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, Tim, I just wanted to call in and discuss real quick with you what the previous caller had brought up regarding the Awake Souls channel with Ronnie and Jason. I just wanted to state a couple of things. I mean, you're probably well versed in their content, maybe, I don't know, but he had mentioned something about Pac-Man's son, and I just wanted to state that if you do watch any other content, they're very clear that they do not promote a Pac-Man son. Now, there is a looping effect that they talk about because they pretty much say that there is no border. There's no border that can be discerned or detected, but it's a very complex model, and I don't want to get too deep into the details because I know you don't really care for models. I understand that. I totally get that.
Sure, but okay, I do want to avoid misrepresentations, and people say, well, what do you mean he doesn't have an edge? And I would return to them, well, what about your universe? What's at the edge of your universe? Because we're talking about the same universe, but the difference is we're talking about one that is less known or soon to be known, so it's smaller. And they're saying, oh, we know what's up for trillions of light years, but then after that, we don't know. And I'm just saying, no, our question marks are much closer. So, the assumption of an edge or a border has always been part of their straw man take on what we're describing here. So I'm glad to hear that you have some clarification for us, and I am going to reach out to them because I'd rather hear from them, because I'm curious to know how this is going to evolve the conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think that would be such a fascinating conversation because I'll be honest, a lot of overlap is what brought me to your channel, and I kind of I've been pretty immersed in their content to just understanding what their model represents, and again, I understand, you don't cling to a model. I get that. I really do. But I just wanted to say that, when I first came to the understanding of the possibility of the globe being a deception, the A.E. Gleason's map was the first thing that I kind of saw, and unfortunately, I did sort of cling to that, and I didn't even really look into it too deeply, but it just made a lot more sense. But then some other interesting overlaps kind of brought me over to their side of things, and then looking at what. Go ahead.
Well, I think we do have overlap in one regard. I know for a fact that they're very much media skeptics. They're very quick. They were very quick early on to start calling out the media fakery, CGI, and they recognize the nature or the scope of the world deception. So that's important because there are people who think the flat versus round thing is really about shape when it's about worldview. And the people defending the globe side, maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, but they're generally ignorant about media fakery. And Ronnie and Johnny are very well apprised of it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. It's definitely, once I started sort of hearing your perspective and seeing or understanding the mental model and that the map isn't the territory, like that all clicked in really hard for me. And I thought, wow, that is mind blowing. And, even though I do see some merit to modeling programs based on information or data that, if you have the right understanding and the tools, you can go out and gather yourself. Like for me, example, I could go out and gather certain astronomical information regarding the luminaries, and I could match that up with what the science says to see if it's accurate. Can I trust suncalc.org, or can I trust some of these other applications that can show you what the heavens are doing? I don't have that level of precision. I definitely don't have the tools or anything like that. So I kind of do have to, unfortunately, try to take somebody's word for it to a certain degree. Like, I can see the sun rising, I can see the sun setting, I can see the moon, I can see the stars, but I don't have the equipment to sit there and study them, time lapse, that kind of thing, or get the various different tools out to measure the angles and all that kind of stuff. So, I'm kind of like flying blind in that regard, and I do want to be able to trust somebody because I can't do it for myself. And I guess that's kind of a lack on my part because, hey, what's stopping you, right? I mean, there's plenty of things in life that I could excuse about.
That's where the hypotheticals come in, the hypothesis. You're like, this is my best guess, or I'm going to try this and then try to falsify it. And that's where, we have it right here, is that we're not stuck on a model. We're constantly testing it. And that's why we need to have this final experiment. We need to add more information and put it into our sum total. But we're debating against people who assume they have all the information. The globe is a big, arrogant construct. And its adherents are what I call low information believers, where a lot of them don't even know what they really believe in. They just know it's the right thing to believe. And I'm saying I'm a non-believer. I want to know. And this final experiment may not make me a knower. It may not make me any more or really truly any more informed about what it is. It's just going to add more information for me to consider. But I'm still suspending judgment because the space agencies are proven liars. But I'm not going to be ignoring information. We just have to include it.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And, hearing some of the other things that you talk about, even I think it was just the most recent podcast where you were speaking about, when new information comes into your understanding and your paradigm, you have to be willing to shift, because if you are really trying to find out the truth about reality or whatever the case may be, you have to be willing to accept new information so long as it meets certain criteria. Obviously, I mean, you can't just accept everything. And yes, of course, testing everything and then creating new hypotheses whatever the word is, hypotheses to further try to invalidate what you've already found to see if it can even be invalidated. So yeah, absolutely. And again, I just wanted to thank you and the entire IPS think tank. You guys do a great job dissecting, analyzing. It's truly amazing. And yeah, it would just be so awesome if you were to have a conversation with Awake Souls in particular. I could care less for any of the other flat earthers. I think they're all, I don't know, they're stuck in their own egos. And that's not to say that, maybe Awake Souls, nobody's perfect, okay, right? So, I mean, we all have our flaws. And but yeah, I get it. Again, just me personally.
That's why
it'd be a really awesome conversation.
I'm looking forward to it because whatever happens, it's going to shake up a lot of maybe a lot of the stagnation maybe it'll be a purifying thing to happen. It'll cause people to reframe everything, and it might even innervate the whole conversation all over again, but in a more productive direction. So I look forward to it. I am going to reach out to Awake Souls, and I have them on Zoom right here, so I'm going to see if I can arrange to speak with them before the final experiment. And yeah, definitely call back after or anytime. It's coming up in a few days, so I'm definitely looking forward to it, and I appreciate you calling in.
Absolutely. You have a good rest of your night. Take care.
All right. Thank you. We had two great back-to-back callers here. And so Awake Souls is someone I'm familiar with a lot of them. I'm familiar with many of the different Flat Earth channels, and it's not about consensus agreement. It's about we're all asking the same questions. David says, anyone here follow Jake the A-hole? Yeah, I haven't kept up with him lately, although I know he did have some criticism for Pastor Will Duffy and the whole final experiment premise. We should be suspicious. We should be suspicious that this is being presented as a one-shot, one-kill. It's a false dichotomy. It is flat or round, and this is the thing that will settle it, and they want everyone to agree. It's like, okay, do it, but it doesn't change the fact that we still observe media fakery on the ground and up above, and what we consistently point out here is that the fakery has the same origin. It is the PSYOP entertainment complex. It encompasses fake space, fake assassinations, fake terror attacks, and all the rest. So no, this isn't going to constitute any kind of damage control on behalf of the worldview the establishment would have us adhere to, the internal map they want us to internalize. I'm surprised Jake the A-hole didn't go, because this is, I think it's a great opportunity. I'm surprised at the people who turned it down. Alex Stein turned it down. Alex Stein. I used to call him Alex Stein because I said he would never go away. But after his recent treatment by Milo Yiannopoulos, I think he might. It's pretty brutal. If you get out into the right extreme, eating its own post-election, very predictable. I guess they're just bored. By the way, if you didn't see it, the show The Madness, as I mentioned before, they killed Laura Loomer, Elon Musk, and Stu Peters. Who killed them? Don Lemon. Yep. Predictive programming proxies. These characters are obviously based on world stage characters, even as I mentioned here earlier today. Forbes noted that it was Elon Musk is the tech billionaire financing the Nazis. Their predictive programming is so ham-fisted. Okay, let me make sure I caught up on everything else. We've been talking about the drone wars. We're being New Jersey. No, is it New Jersey? Yeah, New Jersey is being swarmed by drones, or reports of drones. It's all just rumor. Like the UFO invasion is just going to be a bunch of people deep faking each other. Doesn't even have to really exist. We now have 300 plus people listening. That's just on video, so we're definitely in the 333 range. The Madness Sucks boost as Mango Penguins. Well, I don't watch this stuff for entertainment. I watch it to decode and to see what the masses are being programmed with. And one of the scenes in The Madness, there was this character, an FBI agent, who said, there's a virus in the country and it kills. It kills for real. And he wasn't talking about COVID. He was talking about right-wing extremism coming from the internet, financed by billionaires who are dumping money into neo-Nazi groups in order to cause real death to influence elections. That's their story. It's ridiculous, obviously, but you can understand the political utility of this Netflix show. And they had certain statements that I took out just to play here so you could all see, these are targeted messages that they want the public to acquiesce to censoring and locking down the internet until we can get rid of mind viruses. And Elon Musk is there to conveniently provide the pretext for censorship. Kevin Mooring says they shot down a drone over New Jersey. FBI is looking for it. It's probably ducks or geese. A Newful says Tim will celebrate the day he gets 611 views. Well, we used to get like 400 or 500 live viewers consistently on the original channel. And we do have the original channel back up. Isn't that strange? The very first IPS channel was shut down in 2017. Between 2017 and 2024, we had more than 150 channels because they were constantly being shut down by the person I'm suing. So for about 5 years, our channels were shut down before I could get more than 100 subs. But like in the last year, I've been able to build up this channel to 1,500 subs. But about a month ago, I woke up in the middle of the night with this sudden impulse to contact YouTube and promise not to spread misinformation and request that they appeal. I put in an appeal and I requested that they reopen my old accounts. I did it just because. And one after another, they started opening up old accounts. And so I thought, let me just try the original one. And sure enough, they turned it back on. So this account with 300 plus videos that had been dormant for more than 6 years is suddenly back up. But I instantly got a strike because even though the videos were private, they go through and they pull stuff. So I had to, I'm treating that channel very carefully because there's a lot of videos on there that I want to re-upload, but I want to make sure I'm not censored for it. But my point is, we used to consistently get hundreds of listeners, and then we came back in 2019. We had a channel that would reach 1,500 live viewers. So we've had ups and downs, and it's not because of the content. In fact, if anything, the quality of our content has improved. The quality of the think tank. Our think tank has become more efficient at what it does. We are a fake news wood chipper. Just throw it all in there. We'll parse it for you. Truman B3000 says Netflix CEO is related to Sigmund Freud and America's propaganda expert Edward Bernays. Yeah, Edward Bernays is the father of public relations, and he's credited with a couple of things. Bacon at the breakfast table and the association of cigarettes with women's lib. Now, interestingly, if you've seen Blink Twice, a recent movie about mind control, the end scene has the two female protagonists who beat the sexist males and escape their torture island. They share a cigarette at the end. And the way they did it to celebrate their freedom, I said, hey, it's a little freedom torch. This has got to be a reference to feminism. Because the movie was displaying toxic masculinity versus females and their pushback. So I didn't think that was a coincidence. But here, Edward Bernays, his best-known campaigns, 1929, he promoted female smoking by branding cigarettes as feminist torches of freedom. The father of public relations credited with advancing PR and manipulating public opinion in ways that undermine individual autonomy and democratic values. Yeah, no kidding. So his relationship to Netflix, the blood relation, yeah, it's intriguing for a lot of reasons. It makes too much sense. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, IPS, how's it going, man?
Hey, thanks for calling.
Hey, happy to talk to you. I used to listen to you back in the day, probably like 2016. You were just talking about it. Congrats on getting your channel back, by the way.
Yeah, thank
That's
you.
lit.
It's totally random. What's your moniker, or what was it?
Droid Expert, I believe.
Okay, cool. I'm pretty sure I remember.
Yeah. I had a wrench, you know.
Then
back then.
you still do then. When you go on the channel, you still will have it. You'll have the OG wrench.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. That's so cool. Yeah, man, I wanted to ask you what you think about this. I haven't heard your take on it. I haven't been, like, up to date on your streams or anything because it's kind of new and I'm trying to fit it in, you know, see where it fits in with my plays and stuff. But what do you think about the CEO vibe, the whole New York thing?
Yeah, I think
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, yeah. So I was just mentioning the movie The Madness, where the CEO gets killed, or this guy gets killed, and this guy says this is a turning point. So I'm getting the feeling that this is something to build up revolutionary sentiment, like French Revolution sentiment, among the left. Like they're going to agitate the Antifa all over again, just like 2020. I think that's where it's coming from, because the narrative fits the class warfare. A lot of people are cheering the death of a CEO. So I think it's psyop.
Yeah. Yes, man, exactly. That's what I'm talking about too. Like whenever you have both sides of the battery, you have people saying, "Hey, I'm so happy that guy got it," and then other people are like, "It's horrifying in broad daylight," and then you can get them to fight each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you look at the messaging, like they advertise the messaging on the bullets, which references why he did it. It's like a manifesto. And I find that questionable that we're given the whole story right up front. And then we've been looking at the symbolism, and it's like he looks like Robin Hood with his hood, which is the icon of, take from the rich, give to the poor class. It's like a Marxist class warrior right here. And that's how he's being looked at.
I like that, dude. That's classic IPS think tank right there. Nice work. Yeah, man, I actually have an interesting story about this. So I was at Burger King eating my lunch. I'm on lunch, and I'm in there, and a baby boomer, like I'm on the phone with the guy, and he comes over to me. He's probably like 75, 78 years old. He's like, "What are you doing? Are you on the phone?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, I'm on the phone. I'm like talking to people right now." He's like, "Oh, okay. Well, I'll just like," so he starts having a full conversation with me, like while I'm on the phone. He's like, "I thought you were that guy that shot that CEO." And I'm like, "You thought I was a killer?" He's like, "Yeah, I did." I'm like, "Okay." And he's like, "So what do you think about stocks?" Like, I kind of think he was just using it as an excuse to like talk to somebody, how the old people are. And we ended up having a whole conversation. He's like, "I make $500 a day off my retirement stuff, all my stocks and everything." I'm like, "Great, boomer. I'm in crippling debt." It's just like, and then I even told him too, I'm like, "Don't you think that seems a little salacious?" I'm like, I don't really know if I should believe in that, the CEO drama, because it's just a little made for TV. It's a little salacious. I don't think, and he accepted it for a minute and then reverted instantly back to his, believing the whole thing, obviously.
But it fits so perfect in what they've shown us. Like I mentioned the Joker movie. So in Joker, he was someone who fell through the cracks. He was mentally ill. And he said to the guy he shot, he said, "What do you get when you treat someone like crap and you don't give them help?" So in other words, it's about the bottom of society hitting back. And so the fact that this guy was smiling in one of the pictures, he looks like Joker from the Boston bombing. They associate Joker, class warrior, kill the rich. That was the theme in the Joker, Robin Hood. So it's all there. I think this is a neatly packaged psyop.
Yes, and you can kind of see what they're going for too. They want to, they want to power up they want to make the masses groan and mow and get ready, and to Jan 6 something when the time comes.
Absolutely. So I look at psyops as accelerant on the fire. They're always throwing stuff out there. And so this one just seemed to really light up the left in a really grotesque way, because they're like, yeah, we want blood. And who's going to want blood more than them? They're going to be so aggrieved because they're experiencing what MAGA experienced in 2020. They feel like they had their candidate stolen from them, and there's a lot of resentment. They may not call it election. They'll say in the movie The Madness, it was all about interference with the election. And that's one of the things I constantly hear. They're saying it's Russian propaganda influenced it. So we're seeing that resentment being stoked.
Exactly. Yeah, the Russian aspect too. Yeah. So real quick, I got you on the whole experiment. What are they calling it? The Antarctica trip thing that they're doing? The Great Experiment or something?
They're calling it the final experiment, is what they're calling it.
The final experiment. Yeah. Yeah, man, I don't like it. I like that it's getting people's attention and that it's bringing this concept to potentially new eyes that haven't heard it, but it's pigeonholed from the beginning, dude. They're literally saying, like, this one aspect is going to either prove or disprove something, and then you have flat earthers literally signing on and saying, "Hey, I'm in," and what you're saying is, I'm agreeing to these terms, where if we see this sun, then it's not a flat earth. Like, it's the craziest thing ever. You know, it's like just by participating, just by joining in as a flat earther, it's like you've already lost. You know.
Exactly.
In a way.
It's a false dichotomy. It's an either or fallacy. And what I'm hoping this does is I hope it kills the fake debate. The flat versus round has gone on long enough. Let's go ahead and kill that off, and then move the conversation to somewhere productive, like media fakery, and then other models. So if the Globe side thinks that they're going to score a win here, that they're going to shut the conversation down, no, we're going to take the conversation out of their controlled domain, because the people who defend the Globe model religiously don't know about media fakery. Like, we're out of their depth at this point.
Yeah, it's so disappointing, dude. Like, it's so disappointing how many people just believe media. Like they can't even they can't even imagine that what they're saying could not be accurate, that what the media says could not be accurate. Like, they can't even fathom it, and it's just horrifying to me, you know.
It's rather staggering, the scope of it all, and I see glimpses where people are like, "Oh, the Trump ear shooting looked fake," but they believed the fireman really died. So they still can't parse real from fake, even though they might identify something here or there. They're in the box, and we're not, so we're not really hindered by that. But
exactly, yeah, it almost seems to me like it's a symptom of like a reality being like fluid almost, where like that people are this susceptible to like lies. You know what I mean? It's like, I just kind of tie it into, you know, kind of like we create this place to a certain degree, like by being here. You know what I mean? I don't know if you're on board with that at all, but it seems like we are, like, it's a fluid kind of scenario that we're in, and like things can change. And oh, also, dude, what do you think about the Aquarius? Do you have an opinion?
The Aquarius, what is that?
Like,
are you talking about?
So just that Pluto entered Aquarius, you know, on the 18th of last month, and last time Pluto entered Aquarius was 1776 through 1796, which was the Revolutionary War, the Irish Uprising, and the I forget, the French Revolution. Yeah, all happened within that 20-year period which is a mathematical certainty, by the way. But you know, it's just
okay. I didn't know that, but that's interesting. So I know Jupiter is extremely bright right now. So you said Jupiter in Aquarius because.
Oh no, Pluto entered Aquarius.
Pluto.
Okay, so Pluto has a 20-year allotment in each zodiacal sign, and every 30 degrees or whatever of the zodiacal signs. So Pluto, every 20 years it changes signs. And when it changes, like, it's kind of like people consider it like the death aspect, or kind of like a Shiva character, where it like kind of tears down the old and rebuilds the new.
Okay,
you know I mean?
Okay. So, like, for example, Pluto returned to its July 4th, 1776 position in 2022.
Yeah.
It was our nation's Pluto return. And they said that the Pluto return signifies the fall of an empire, because no empire lasts long enough for it to come back twice. And so I haven't seen this, but it has to be significant, because I remember there were a ton of psyops that were directly connected to Pluto's return. And Pluto is also the one that Pluto is Hades, and Hades releases the Kraken.
Yes, exactly. And you know, the whole coronavirus was really pinned to the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at that time. So it's pretty interesting, just that, you know, so Pluto was approaching Aquarius at that time as well. But the thing is, then it retrograded, and Pluto moved so slow that it retrogrades for like 9 months. You know what I mean? So it literally went back into Capricorn, and then just on the 18th of last month of November, it finally went direct in Aquarius forever. Like for the next 20 years, it'll be there.
Okay, this is
interesting.
I'm going to look into it. I just found a site on it, Pluto and Aquarius, the Awakening. I will be looking into this. I've bookmarked it. I appreciate you calling, and I'm glad that you're someone from the original channel. It's kind of a big deal, because this think tank has been fine-tuning itself, evolving since we started. We haven't stopped, but it's always good to hear from someone who's been here from the beginning. So I appreciate you calling in and sharing your thoughts.
All right. Thank you, man. I appreciate you too. And, we're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep doing it and the energy is kind of shifting, I think, towards, the future. So could it be? Maybe. Who knows?
Well, thanks,
man. Have a good one.
Thanks for the leads and information. Have a great Saturday. All right. That's intriguing. I'm going to be bookmarking all these things. Pluto in Aquarius. All really interesting. So when we were looking at Pluto return to where it was during America's birth, which was July 4th, 1776, that actually fell on 2/22/2022. And on 2/22/2022, there was this elaborate event called Dawn Day 2 with Ye and Marilyn Manson, interestingly, where it was a live performance of an album with this like Pluto-esque purplish light, this big house that burns, fascinating symbolism. And a lot of it, I believe, pertained to the return of Pluto and what it implied as far as America, the West, and the sinking of the West. And I think that Ye, or Kanye West, was officiating over the ceremony for very specific reasons, including his name, West, tying into the specific meaning of this ritual, which is the sinking of the West, the fall of the West, and the connection of Pluto, Hades, the Kraken ties into it, because the Kraken is what delivers the death blow. The Kraken is the iceberg that hits the Titanic. The Kraken will be the Poseidon missile that Putin launches that decimates Seattle. The Kraken is going to be whatever it is that brings down the Tower of Babel. And that's what we're waiting for. The Kraken is a reoccurring theme that really emerged in 2020, but we saw the symbolism really being dumped into the zeitgeist in 2022. Many of you were here for that. A Newful says, damn, these callers can't stop hitting the nail. Yeah, this must be a good time period too. We'll be doing Infinite Plane Saturday like this often, where we just open up the phones right away and try to get callers in. It's always good to hear first-time callers. And our callers always drop off, the best leads, best hints and things to follow up on. So I'll be checking up with Joe Rogan and Mike Benz, Pluto and Aquarius, Free Energy. I'll be hitting up Awake Souls, Ronnie and Johnny. See what they have to say about the final experiment. Because, yeah, again, the final experiment is not the end of the conversation. It's the part of the conversation that needs to die off. The whole flat versus round. I said it should be enervated by this. It should die off. And the globe people can stick to their CGI ball. Even if there's a real ball made of dirt beneath it, they still believe in a CGI version that isn't the real thing. And we're trying to get past the facade. The facade earthers will be stuck with their facade because they don't know that the news is fake. Oh, check this out. So the Infinite Plane Society Twitter channel, I'll put a link. Here we are on X. It's IPS Think Tank. And when we are live, you'll see a pink ring around my avatar. It says live. And if you scroll down, you can actually listen and watch live. Generally, we see Patricia Steer here. It's a good place to get notices, but also the live streams that are here stay up here. Meaning, if you don't subscribe to my newsletters, if you're not on Patreon, if you're not on any of the podcast feeds, you can also check us out on Twitter. And the archives are there, updated daily. Okay, I'm scrolling through my feed. Earlier today, we played a short clip of how in New York today, a bunch of anarchists, lefties, whatever you want to call them, they had a contest to dress up like the CEO killer, the United Healthcare CEO killer lookalike competition. This is sick. This is totally sick. Imagine if a bunch of Proud Boys dressed up like Derek Chauvin or something. Like, this is insane. And what is really sick about this is that these individuals who are celebrating the murderer, who's still at large, smugly, smilingly, these disgusting psychopaths think it was real. I openly mock, I irreverently give my take on these events because I don't think they're real. If I did, I might tread a little more carefully. These individuals here have no souls. This is sickening. But we're pointing out here that the wardrobe, the Robin Hood, they just found their Robin Hood. And I've heard many people on the podcast sphere talking about how, oh, this is great. Like, oh, it's bad that a CEO died. But who really cares if a CEO died? Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of that equivocating where they're basically saying, yeah, we're happy he's dead. More, please. But they can't exactly say that without sounding psychopath, but they have such low self-awareness that a lot of them are just blatantly giving it away. I think I even have a clip. Let me play this to you. So this is Taylor Lorenz. Now, this is a Washington Post reporter, and she's making the case that it's a good thing that healthcare CEOs get assassinated.
I'm speaking to the sentiment. People do want these executives dead. If you have
But you
watched,
said we want them dead,
And so when they say we, she's not saying I want them dead, because that implies that she might have individual responsibility. She's saying we because she's claiming to speak for the collective. The collective needs these bad individuals destroyed. This is another reason why Musk is so prevalent today. The collective needs Musk regulated, because look what he did to free speech and cyberspace, our commons. Look what he did to low Earth orbit, our commons. I'll play a few more seconds. This is Taylor Lorenz, Washington Post, bloodthirsty psychopath, saying she's, quote, with the people. She said, I'm going to say I'm with the people.
I mean, look, I'm going to say I'm with the people in the sense that if you have watched a loved one die because insurance has denied them life-saving essential health care, it is natural to wish that the people who run those systems would suffer the same fate as your loved one. And millions of people across America have had this experience. So yes, am I, when I say, do I wish someone dead, is that advocating for them to be killed? No, of course.
She says no, but then she says, but. Do I want them dead? No, but I do.
Of course not. But am I going to shed tears or have a lot of empathy for somebody that has facilitated the death?
So again, just pointing out, she thinks it's real. She's in the box. And she's responding authentically. This is her real face. That is insane. But it's revealing too. You have to remember that psychopaths, sociopaths, they don't look like the bad guys in movies. They're total normies. Just a little important piece of information to keep in mind. Someone here had said something about a 24-hour telethon. Who was that? Oh, okay. Let's see. Was it Shed Dog? He said, anyway, you could do an IPS 24-hour live stream telethon fundraiser like Jerry's Kids. I would consider doing some kind of a fundraiser, maybe to send somebody to the North Pole. Absolutely. Or anything at all. I'm a believer in crowdfunding. I do think that the more people you get behind something, the more doors you open, and we have a pretty good record of making things happen. Lean Dion says, wow, that's straight out of a Batman movie, mobs dressing up. Yeah, exactly. They're cosplaying as the shooter. But they're making this acceptable. This is like, okay, you have the Overton window. The Overton window, the window of discourse, where in order to open the window of discourse wider, you throw something wild out there, you see what people tolerate, but you expand the window of discourse. And at this point, they've expanded it to where now we can have, as an acceptable discussion, people weighing the merits of killing CEOs. The Overton window is an approach to identifying ideas that define the spectrum of acceptability. It says politicians can only act within the acceptable range. Shifting the window involves proponents outside the window persuading the public to expand the window. Well, we don't even have an Overton window. They just blew it off. They just blew it up. They took it off. It's not even a window anymore. It's just a big gaping whole into pure chaos, into the collective id. Anything goes. Nothing is all that unacceptable if people are going to talk about killing CEOs so flippantly. Plain decoded, yeah, the assassination of the healthcare CEO is a psyop. And I would say it's a psyop because of the shooter's connection to a few things. Dzhokhar Sarnaev, Robin Hood, the Joker, and the significance of the Joker with the kill the rich class warfare narrative, and this being compared or being connected with the idea of class warfare and how it's justified by some. So the framing of this tells me it's all fake. The purpose of it, it seems to me, is likely to agitate or, I think, maybe stir up sentiment on the left. Like, this is the turning point. The turning point in the madness was when this individual was killed, and it activated people on the other side to do similar things. In fact, in the movie The Madness, you had this group of anarchists, and they called them like Antifa on meth. And they had a gun commune where they were printing out like 3D printed guns. So an anarchist gun commune. This is episode 3 of The Madness. Now, the people in the commune looked like this shooter. A bunch of hoodies, armed people, guns. So I'm finding a lot, and I knew I would. I'm finding a lot connecting The Madness, which just came out, and it's the #1 show right now, to what's happening in the world. And this is predictive, because one of the things that happens in The Madness is the CEO gets taken out, and it is seen as a heroic act. So we're seeing something here. This is a movie. That's what I'm saying. This is a movie. What a bunch of LARPers. Now, will there be any kind of copycats? Will there be examples of stochastic terror and people following through? I highly doubt it. Look at this guy's shirt. Deny, defend, depose. So the shooter hasn't even been caught yet, and he's a hero to these people. They see him as a hero. That should be disturbing. I think it should be anyway. But they feel like they have the moral high ground because all the propaganda teaches them that the poor are victims of the rich and they're poor because of the rich. And this would also tie in, I think, in a lot of ways to recent statements by Musk about capitalism versus communism with regard to the moon landing. We're seeing these talking points brought up again and again. I mean, it's very basic tug-of-war stuff, left versus right, but you see people fall for it. But if they have you siding with the shooter, then you're in the game. That you're so deep in the game, you're not even recoverable. The connection to Robin Hood, whoever pointed it out, very interesting connection here. Again, he's a proto-Marxist class warrior, take from the rich, give to the poor. And in Joker, let me bring up his quote. Because when he shoots Murray Franklin, he says something first in the form of a joke. He says, how about another joke? What do you get? I want to get the whole quote here, because this is the scene where he shoots on live TV Murray Franklin. He says, I don't need any more of your jokes. Okay, here we go. How about another joke?
Most people...
And this is key because all throughout the movie, the Joker, you see the class warfare sentiment where it does say kill the rich. And it is also made plain throughout the movie that Joker is a victim of the rich, that the rich have all the power and the privilege, and people like him, they fall through the cracks. So here we go. And a couple of things that make this highly significant too is the fact that the Joker here is based on Travis Bickle. And Travis Bickle inspired Reagan's shooter. So that in itself is a huge giveaway here. And that's why Robert De Niro is the one being shot, because, again, De Niro played Travis Bickle. It's all very integrated when you look at how the movies and the psychological operations, the hoaxes on the world stage, connect together. Okay, now here's his final joke. This is the actual quote here. What do you get when you cross a mentally ill loser with a society that abandons him and treats him like trash?
What do you get?
I don't think so.
When you cross
I think
a
we're
mentally
done
ill
with you,
loner
Joe.
with
That's
a
it.
society that abandons him and treats him like trash.
Now, that same narrative comes out of the Riddler, who is also attacking the mayor because his mental illness wasn't properly handled by the city and he fell through the cracks. Same story. And the Riddler looks just like Thomas Crook. Thomas Crook, the guy that shot Trump. And as we talked about before, at the end of the Batman movie, the Riddler sings Ave Maria in his cell. And Batman says, "What did you do?" Banging on the glass. And at the Butler, Pennsylvania trip that Trump made the second time, they had a moment of silence for the victims. And at 6/11, during the moment of silence, they had some man come out and sing Ave Maria, which again ties into the Riddler and the Batman movie. So the Riddler, the Joker, what are we talking about here? We're talking about the assassin, the shooters on the world stage being represented in fiction prior and being attached to the specific archetype of the Joker, but the Joker as a class warrior, as an anti-hero, as fighting for the we, like the woman would say, like we, the people, against the elite. Joe Santos said, did they force a Joker movie out during the election? You know, I would say that movie did feel forced. Joker 2, if that's what you're talking about. Now, the first Joker came out in 2019 before the 2020 riots. And that was plenty of foreshadowing. I mean, Joker inspired all these other people to put on clown masks and go burn down the city and fight cops. And 2020 was a bunch of people running around with clown masks, burning down cities and fighting cops. But these connections go much, much deeper when you get into these actors like De Niro in particular and Joker Sarnev, his resemblance to the shooter. It is so deep. And it goes very, very deep. Like, for example, so De Niro came into the equation because he was outside of the Trump courthouse. Full-on Trump derangement syndrome earlier this summer. But on 4/19, back in April, while Trump was in the courthouse, you had Maxwell Azrello set himself on fire outside of the courthouse. Why? To protest the rich. He said rich fascists have taken over both parties, that Clinton and Trump are the same. So while this guy is self-immolating outside the courthouse, we're looking into his background, and there's a picture of him wearing a shirt that says, "Eat the Rich," which was a huge BLM thing in 2020, but eat the rich, kill the rich. And then it goes even deeper when you go into the date, 4/19, how that ties into Waco, Dave Koresh, Timothy McVeigh. Okay, well, there's so much more we can get into. We've been live here for 3 hours and 11 minutes. I am going to send archives out, and there's a good chance that we'll be doing our Discord conversation live chat tomorrow. We had planned it for last week, but I had food poisoning, which pushed it back, but we are going to do it. Archives will go out tonight. There's going to be a lot of them because we have tonight's, and then we have from the last 2 live streams. We had several new callers tonight. Appreciate you all calling in and sharing your information. This is a very interesting time to be involved in this topic, in these topics. A lot is happening. The final experiment just around the corner. And we're looking at the unfolding PSYOP. And that's why I said the other day, I need to wait before I decided as to whether I was going to say this was real or fake. But based on the initial data dump, all the information they gave us, I kind of assumed it's too theatrical. It's telling a story and people are getting involved. And now looking at the iconography, the symbolism, the Robin Hood stuff, the Joker connections. Yeah, this shooter is a PSYOP operative. The CEO is obviously not dead in my view, but if he is, makes it all the well, it's very unlikely, to be honest. I hardly entertain that possibility. Kevin Mooring says, Tim, look at the movie Carry On. Is it a new one? Shed Dog says, have you solved the food poisoning source? I think it was black eyed peas, to be honest. So what is Carry On about? A young TSA agent. Those are the guys with the blue gloves that want to squeeze your legs before you get on the airplane. Very useful, aren't they? They prevented so many terror attacks. Oh, no, wait. You know, isn't that strange? It's like after the big terror attack, then we get the preventative measures. It's like, wait, we could have used this before. And now it's not only redundant, but it's jamming up the system. That was a major purpose to the big PSYOP of 9/11 was the TSA. I mean, now you have a ubiquitous pretext to pat you down to make sure you don't have any bombs beneath your clothes when you get on the airplane, which seems rational, but it's all about progressivism. So first we get you, in this first iteration, to concede that, yeah, it's okay for the government to palpate our bodies before we get on the planes. Now, fast forward 19 years, now the state has a compelling interest in knowing what's in your blood because of the potential effects of a super spreader. So you've gone from beneath your clothes to now they're actually beneath your skin. Now we're awaiting the next layer. The next layer is where they get to know what's on your mind before you can travel. So first it's what's in your clothes, what's beneath your skin, then what's on your mind. What mind viruses do you have? What websites have you browsed? And that was one of the things in the movie The Madness, was they went through the person's browser history. Like, so we're seeing a lot of the buildup towards the new censorship state, the quarantined internet, the lockdown to come. Okay, anyway, a young TSA agent fights to outsmart a mysterious traveler who blackmails him into letting a dangerous package slip onto a Christmas Eve flight. Jason Bateman. Looks intriguing. So between this and Homestead, we have a nuke and some kind of an airborne, perhaps dirty bomb or something. We've got something coming this Christmas. A Christmas present from Putin. Okay, well, this has been great. Appreciate everybody here taking the time to comment and participate. I have a lot of homework to do now. And we're going to do our chat tomorrow. I will be sending out a live stream notification first. So you don't want to miss it. If you want to be involved in the group Discord chat, you're going to have to go to IPS.monster. And what you'll want to do is subscribe to the newsletter so that you get the live stream notification, which will tell you when we're going to Discord. And I'll also provide links so that you can just press a button and you'll be in. And so these voice chats are there for the purposes of letting more voices in, and then you can mutually communicate and we can go in directions that maybe aren't so guided. Blap that kneecap says later. Yeah, thanks for joining. Appreciate all the lurkers. And of course, Ted Stryker, thanks for the wrenches. And this is Symbia's Auto Hoaxology. We'll have the archives out later this evening.
Don't believe in chemtrails, I don't live in Truthville. Just because you saw it on the screen doesn't make it real. I don't take the red pill, I don't take the blue pill. I just choose to follow my dreams, auto hoax and chill. I stepped off the world stage and I moved away from all the fake outrage and the hearsay. And I don't give the time of day to those that naysay, because they got a bad case of the mind day. I stepped away from the game entirely. I won't be caught up in their lame dichotomy. I stepped away from the cage entirely. I'm free today and my mind's been set by reading out of hoaxology, out of the control system finally. I know where to go if you follow me, cause I've been reading out of hoaxology. Nothing can bother me, out of hoaxology. Won't put the screen before it's blasphemy. I won't become another mind war casualty. I came manipulations of the auto-believer to become a new creation on the raft of receivers. Standing on the sword of truth, I stepped the backs of deceiver, demanding burdens for the proof from all the hacks and believers. I stepped away from the game entirely. I won't be caught up in the lame dichotomy. I stepped away from the cage entirely. I'm free today and my mind's been saved by reading auto-hoaxology. Out of the control system finally. I know where to go if you follow me. Cause I've been reading auto-hoaxology. Nothing can bother me. Auto-hoaxology. What would the screen before it's blasphemy? I won't become another mind war casualty. I came up out the realm of possibility to take the helm within